on. You're live.
How's it on, everybody? All right, somebody want to take attendance for this, where it is at least a workshop? Diane, can you just go through the participants?
Okay, Councilor Albert.
Here.
Councilor La Rochelle.
Here.
Councilor Fellows.
Here.
Councilor Lunt.
Here.
Councilor Ganong.
Here.
Councilor Ward.
Here.
Councilor Colby.
Here.
Perfect.
Go through the planning board as well.
Oh, geez, I don't have their names in front of me.
All right.
Dennis, you want to help out with that one?
Yeah, I don't either, man. I saw current ones here, right?
I'm here.
Lisa?
I see Lisa.
No, Lisa, you don't look like Lisa.
No.
William's here. How about Dan?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Dan Lehman's here.
Here.
Yep.
Mr.
Pat
Carr.
Malloy.
John Carr is here. And Chris Houston. I don't see Pat Malloy, though.
Okay. We got
Dan, obviously here. Dennis Douglas.
Yep. So I think the only one from the planning board is Pat Malloy. It's the only one.
Wow, we did pretty good then, huh?
Yeah.
All right, we have attendance. Kurt,
Yes.
you want to facilitate this? You want me to try it?
I think you should start.
Okay. Long story short, from the council, Don's been trying to keep us apprised of what we actually need to do once the October timeframe came and went, where recreational now got information from the state, and the state had the MMA workshop that you guys have been made access to, and we as well. That said,
I was just able to get in. Okay, all right. I took attendance on that.
my understanding is we need to first opt in by category, same as we have for medicinal, and we can be as limiting or as not as we choose to be. I'll take it from there, and anybody that wants to chime in, feel free to correct me and we can move forward.
I'd be curious to hear from the planning board members on what your feelings are on, our options of either doing nothing and keeping it the way it is, or opting in with regulations, or whether we want to put it to a vote of the public.
I think whatever we do, we're very conscious in prior conversations of making a set of rules that if we decide to opt in, that can be enforceable by Dennis or the police or whomever it is enforceable by. As few gray areas as possible, keep things followed by precedent, what other towns have done, so we have some basis to build off of. I'm personally undecided about how I feel about this, but it's something we can discuss, I guess.
Yeah, as far as the voting piece goes, that will automatically happen if we do anything to the land use chart. Well, as good as public notices are anyways. Right now on the recreational side or the adult use side, we have no across the board as a placeholder with the same categories that we have for medical. But I do think planning board has to look at those categories again, see if the categories fit the new laws that are kind of coming into effect, if we have to adjust those or not. And then obviously the discussion on whether to opt in for adult use or not. The other consideration that I think the part of this meeting should be about is cultivation and where that's allowed as part of this whole frame of discussion. And I don't know if anybody saw, but I believe one of the Lisbon Cannabis companies sent a memo into Alan Ward. Just got distributed fairly late today, I think. So I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read it yet, but they kind of touch on that piece of it, the cultivation piece separate from the retail store piece. So those are the issues I face in code enforcement. Honestly, on my side, recreational medical makes no difference for me. If it's going to be the same kind of regulation, then it really doesn't matter to me which one's which.
Yeah, from my point of view, I don't see marijuana as being any more controversial than liquor. So if the council does want to opt in, first you have to decide that. If you do, then it's fairly simple for us to put in regulations. The number one question is how many you would allow. I think that's a fair question to ask. And I think we could do the rest of it if we had that kind of guidance.
My thought, if I can say so, is that we might want to take baby steps with this. I already know that the planning board has just approved a cultivation site that wishes to go into adult use as well. But my thinking is that I'm listening to people around town tell me that they're concerned about us turning into marijuana haven as far as in the public. We know we have marijuana around, but I mean, as far as the main corridors and stores and things like that. So I'm thinking that personally, if we opted into cultivation and maybe testing everything but retail stores for now, I think that might be a progressive way to go. And it's a simple check or no check on the land use chart. But if we're going to do it, we need to also decide where and under what conditions, and possibly how many cultivation sites.
After hearing some of what we've talked about right now, I think that I'd be in favor of if land use is going to ultimately dictate where it can and cannot happen. I'm a fan of opting in just so that we have the options to regulate as we see fit. And I certainly understand the concern that some of the constituents that you've heard from, Dawn, may have, because it's something new and it feels different. And I don't think any one of us wants to see as many marijuana shops, recreational shops, as we have hair shops down on Main Street. But at the same time, I'm a huge fan of businesses coming into town and free market dictating, those who do a good job will be here and they'll be generating revenue and paying taxes and expanding their businesses. And we love every part of that. So I guess that's where I'm landing. I'm trying to say that would be something I'd be, the cultivation piece of it, that's a new wrinkle. And I think that we have to really talk about where does it land? I mean, what areas?
The issue for the planning board on the cultivation piece, commercial and village area, and doesn't allow for a cultivation in the rural area the way it's set up now.
So I think that presents that challenge too. If we want to start down that road, then it makes sense that the planning board goes back, revisits that, and says, let's map out what areas make the most sense to allow for cultivation. And it just makes sense. We're gonna move down this road. We might as well be able to control where we want this to happen.
Dennis, can you just repeat where it's allowed? Because you kind of froze up there, and I think the only part of it was captured.
So where it's allowed now is the same as a retail, a caregiver operation, which is your village and commercial zones, same place we will allow a storefront. Okay. So those person with that license, the cultivation is in the same license category. Yep. So it doesn't allow any other places.
Okay.
Where you wouldn't have a retail store out in a rural area, it might be okay for a grow operation that doesn't have retail, Right.
And the other piece that I would actually speak to is the position of the council to date with regard to the medicinal side of things, which is the only thing that's been on the discussion, was we didn't decide to put a number on anything, let the market sort it out. That's been the unanimous view associated with that. If we're going to look at that differently underneath the medicinal, we're going to have to provide you with some input. So I would ask that of the council, because that was the consensus or the vote that prevailed that got us to here. So are we...
But it was to limit the number?
no limitation. Let the market sort it out.
Right, that's where we're at currently,
The
right?
supply and demand will actually do it because retail is the approach that we've taken today. Don, are you of the mindset that coming from the planning board chair at the time to get to here, are you seeing that this is an opportunity to kind of dial that back or reconsider?
Apparently, probably my views are not everybody's views, but I think that there needs to be a cap, and I don't care whether it's medical or recreational as far as adult use stores. I think there should be a maximum number, at least for now. I think that, and I know you're going to say, how do you do that? Well, you do a lottery or you do something in combination with what we already have. But I know the market. I understand the market. The market will weed out the weak guys and all that. But what is the market? And the market also depends upon what the neighboring towns are doing. If we turn out to be the market for Lewiston and for Topsom and for Brunswick because of what we allow, then that's not what I think the town intended. So
no, that has to being a code enforcement for Sabattis. We haven't opted in. So you're right. Any pressure in Sabattis is directed away from Sabattis. It's obvious. You're right. Yes.
So when we open up the market, we have to define in our own mind at least what we think that market is, and that's why I think it should be capped or something, at least for now.
I agree with John. I agree with John. There should be capped.
Are there other councilors' views? Because
I'm not. I'd like to chime in. I'm not in favor of a cap. I don't think that we need a cap. I understand we have different viewpoints on this, Don. That's okay. And I don't feel we would limit any other business at all. I realize it's a new business, so we're kind of in the Wild West as far as still regulating, or at least trying to understand how to regulate and then enforce. And I don't want to put any more pressure on Dennis or the planning board or anyone else. But at the same time, I'm not in favor of regulating businesses. Right now, one of the biggest gripes that we hear is that we should be encouraging new business opportunities and new tax revenue from businesses. No, do I want a McDonald's? I don't know. McDonald's like sort of marijuana presence, recreational on every corner. Is there a potential for that to happen? Yes, potentially. I still think that it's worth making sure that we're being honest about our intentions. And if we went with the idea of not regulating before and cap, I don't want to cap. I just don't feel like we wouldn't do that for alcohol. We wouldn't do it for any other business type. We wouldn't cap on that. And so I don't understand why we would want to cap now on this type of business.
Well, Norm, just to play devil's advocate, this is an industry that is unlike any other, because until a few years ago, it was a criminal act to even sell the thing. So you're transitioning into a new world, a new kind of business. And part of my concern is what Mr. Smith mentions in his email to the council about us becoming capturing a lot of businesses of medical marijuana tourism spot or recreational marijuana tourism spot. And I agree we need more tax revenues. I want to pay less taxes. I would love for the retail side of things to absorb all that. But at the same time, does Lisbon want to be known for its weed supply?
So you're saying that the idea of being the Amsterdam of Maine does not appeal to you at this point?
No, sir.
Okay.
The Moxie's okay?
As long as I don't have to drink it, it's fine.
There are a whole host of jokes that I'm going to leave for after this. We're out of this session.
Did we interrupt you?
Yeah, no, you didn't. It's all good conversation. I think when we first actually opened up this, a couple 3 years ago to medical, there was actually a lot of unknown questions. I mean, we really didn't know what this would play out. We were concerned about our police, our safety, or all this stuff. And I think it's actually pretty much proven that over the last couple of years. I mean, the establishments we have in place now have been actually doing a pretty reputable job. I don't think there's been a lot of police activity, and from what I see, to the place next to me, the clientele is not the clientele I ever thought would be rolling in and out of these places. It's actually people my age are older and driving high-end cars, and it's different than what you would think. But And I'm not sure what the clientele will be when it becomes recreational, but I would assume the people that want to get it on the low on the street corner are still going to be able to do it because there's still the supply there. And from what I understand, the medical and the recreational are going to be two different entities altogether, only because the recreational is going to cost quite a bit more. So it's not going to be the average person just rolling in to buy a baggie because it's cheap, because it's not going to be, because of all the, the stipulations the states put on it. So I don't really have the concerns there. To me, people rolling in to buy it medically or buying it for recreational, I think the balance is going to change a little bit after it becomes more available recreational. People may not actually think they're going to buy it for the medical use. I don't know. Who knows? But I'm for the idea if we can control it. I totally agree with Norm's idea in the sense that we shouldn't be limiting it. But on the other hand, I think it's our due diligence to kind of do that initially and then potentially roll it out a little bit bigger for two reasons. One is Dennis only has one phone to answer. And I think if we open it up for recreational tomorrow unlimited, I don't think the planning board and Dennis and Brett's going to have any sleep, because I think just from what we're seeing from medical, it's actually been pretty overwhelming. I have a recommendation. You can take it for what it is. We actually have 4 establishments in town right now that have actually done their due diligence. They've gone through all the steps. They've actually, in the last 2 years, actually proved to be pretty substantial players. If we wanted to do something for the first year anyways, we could actually offer, that opportunity to the players that are already there and then actually expand it from there, just so, because we already know them, and if they were to come in recreational and do a bad job and they have an opportunity to lose their medical establishment too, because they're kind of tied together, I think they have more skin in the game than actually someone coming from out of a way and actually setting it up and then not actually having to worry about it so much. So, that's just a thought. We already know the players. They know what they've done. They know the guidelines. They know how to play the rules. And, maybe you can actually kind of chime in, because I would assume the security aspects, all that are going to be the same for recreational as they are for medical at this point, right?
From what I read, they're pretty much leveling the field there. So that's why, for me, from a code enforcement standpoint, it really doesn't matter medical or recreational to me. It's the same process I'll have with getting the applicants through the planning board and the council licensing if they go that route. So I don't think that's a difference there. The issue maybe to think about is if you say only the 4 in town, they're all doing medical now, that gives them an instant doubling to do 4 adult use, which doubles what we already have in town right there instantly. Not to say 4 adult uses aren't going to come into town right off, but it almost kind of lends itself to that happening,
So can I jump in real quick? Quick question. Sure. Dennis, because you just mentioned something that maybe I missed it. Or maybe I didn't pick up on that. I thought when the recreation lever was pulled, that those 2 medicinal and recreational couldn't exist in the same building.
That's why I just said they could double their locations in town, because they'll have to have a adult use store separate from a medical store, so they won't be able to. Good. That's what I mean by doubling.
Yeah, good. No, I got you. I just thought for a minute that you were talking about same space split out. I was like, I didn't think they could. Okay, I knew what you meant on the other side of it. That's good. I didn't realize.
But they can actually use the same building. It has to be a separate entrance, separate entity. They can't be actually intermixing same register. So they could actually be the same building. The idea, the biggest difference is the grow has to be quite a bit different, because the way it's actually managed and overlooked from what I read. But maybe Dennis.
They could have separate entrances, and if they have that type of building, that they could do that. Correct. Hey, this is going to sound dumb, but it looks like my laptop battery won't keep up with this program, so it's down to 5 or 4%. So if you guys lose me, I'm just going to go until it runs out here. But it's charging, but it's not keeping up. But real quick, so just so I can say something, I guess I'm with Norm in regards to putting a cap, and the only reason why is who's going to police that? It's going to be very difficult who we pick, unless, like Fern's idea, it's the 4 that are already in town. But who qualifies? But then we also get locked into some locations, because we could have all our licenses used up, and then a good opportunity comes up in town. Whereas Don says, well, we don't have to keep it forever. Well, then all the people we said no to, and then a year later we say no to yes to somebody else. that's where I have a real problem with telling some people and yes, and other people no. And to me, if we're going to have it, we're having it. If we're not, we're not. But I just, before my battery runs out, that's my piece. And
It's good.
from an
I'm
enforcement
asking that
standpoint, I can
question,
enforce either. So
We can talk till we're blue in the face. I want to know what code enforcement thinks. And the fact is, are you in favor of limiting or not? And that's what I thank you for answering that question. And the next question I had for you, Dennis, was, do we have the ability to be able to grandfather specific businesses if we're going to put licenses out there?
I guess I don't know. I mean, they have to renew their license.
They don't submit an application. It's up to them, right? So everybody's
Right. There's really no grandfathering because they have to renew every year as well.
Right. Okay.
I believe I have in South Portland or somewhere, there's a suit going on because apparently it's residents only they're allowing to apply. And so there's some kind of suit going on. I don't know if that would get us involved or not because of preference.
That's the stuff I worry about. That's what I worry about. But I understand
you got the approach.
Limited so we don't become D-place. Like I say, I'm in Sabatis. I say no. Well, guess what? They're checking for land in Lisbon, next town over. So so I get both sides, but I see subject to lawsuits. And is it me deciding who's getting it, or is it Twyla, the town clerk, looking at applications, or is it council deciding? There's a lot to it once we say we're going to limit. That's all.
Question I have also is say this year or next year it becomes federally approved, right? The federal government approves it. I mean, does that mean that actually Extramart and the Big Apple and Rusty Lane has to come in for permitting? I mean, where does that kind of fall into place? Because that's the direction we'll go. You'll be able to go one cooler and grab something, go to the next shelf, grab something, go to the counter. So
absolutely, I see that happening over the counter, no time.
And I think if it was to be at the federal level, if the criminality of it was removed, then I think anything that we put into place becomes null and void because federal law supersedes any law anyway. You slice it. So whatever we had in place, whatever restrictions we had from the state and a local level, are completely washed away by that federal piece.
But growing, I think, would be different. I don't know.
You can usually be more restrictive than the federal laws. I mean, if you look at like alcohol, there's plenty of counties that still have their dry counties. You can't sell alcohol there. So you generally are allowed to be more restrictive, just not less so.
Yeah.
Mark, restrict or not?
What?
Restrict or not, Mark?
Say it again?
Are you for restricting the number or not?
I can see the arguments on both sides. I think there might be some validity to do, restricted to like the established ones for say like 12 months and then, revisit it after that just so, we don't have that, there's an explosion of them everywhere. But I'm okay with it if the rest of the council wants to have no restrictions. I wouldn't be opposed to that either.
Cassie? Same question.
No restriction.
Yeah.
I would say we just treat it same as we do alcohol and any other liquor license.
And I would land there as well too. So I am still in the camp that retail is retail, and I would really counter the fact that anything we do that restricts it just more complicates our code enforcement officer's job. That it's a busy enough day that I don't need to be creating shit for Dennis to do.
Well, there is another option, and that is to opt in for everything but retail stores and then let it play for a while.
It's like a fart in church.
That wouldn't sound good to Brett, would it?
But Diane, is there any actually medical that's limited that we really don't gain a whole lot locally from the taxes being done? But is there any incentive that we get from the recreational more so than we do the medical as far as the taxation?
I haven't seen, it's a good point for, and I don't see honestly that literally this industry hasn't brought anything to a local municipality at all other than filling vacant storefronts.
Not that I know of. I think there's a legislation that somebody wants to do that, but nothing has passed that I know of.
What about
What
licensing?
about personal property?
With that.
Oh, yeah, you'll still get your tax that way, but I think he was more or less asking like a local auction sales tax, which that went through the legislature and that got defeated, so.
One of the things that I can see benefit from is the from what I've heard, I mean, other communities such as Portland, and maybe the number was off, but they actually have a $25,000, sign-on fee as far as for the basic administration of it. It's a yearly fee. I mean, I think that's pretty out there. But on the other hand,
we came up with 400, Dennis? Is that the figure we came up with?
I have to check. Twila does the license fees council. I don't remember what that side is. But
We said it, I believe, comparable to the liquor because again, if we draw on the comparison.
it's 200 then.
I think it's 200 or 250, I can't remember.
Yeah.
200, because I remember that whole dialogue. If we're trying to say that, then you wouldn't do anything else because the enforcement is the same. We use that as a mirror. And the fact is, and at best, there may be a side of, say, a pawnbroker or some other business associated with that. It's a business licensing establishment that we have to go through annually. So at least formalizing that process is the thought that we put to it.
I would be up for the idea of actually having a little bit higher for the recreational. And the only reason being is right now, I mean, if we actually just have it unlimited, I think our limitations as far as for what we want that storefront to look like may be limited. We could actually have someone on 196 opening up their front porch of their house for, a quick stop. You know what I mean? Where do you draw the line on that? You mean the idea of,
Well, we still have all the security stuff and all that. They still have, from what I saw, the recreationals at least making them follow the same guidelines there. But you're right.
But couldn't you do all the legal? I mean, couldn't you actually have all the cameras in a tow?
I agree. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's just one of those things where I think we do got to be a little careful that our storefronts don't look like. I mean, all I can picture is going down south as a kid and seeing all the signs for fireworks. Pulling here, pulling here, pulling here, pulling there. I mean, that's what we don't want. I mean, I think we need to put some credibility behind it if we're going to be doing it, that the storefronts have to meet a certain criteria. And I know we actually have our codes and everything's going to be by the idea of one process or the other going through the planning board. But I think we do want to have, we want to weed out the people that just want to come in and do the quick and dirty. You know what I mean? However that is, I mean, I'm not sure. I would hate to see there be pop up, places on the side of the road, that actually are doing it for seasonal. I mean, not saying that's what we're doing, but
being strict on our planning board guidelines is one. A lot of people will fear away from that, even though it's not very difficult.
Right.
I know that at one time when medicinal first popped up, we talked about making the licensing fees more cost prohibitive so that we wouldn't get the fly-by-nights. Is that something that we feel could be a way to kind of stem the fireworks sidewalk sort of folks? And do we feel like if we were going to go down that road with unlimited, that we could maybe go ahead and make that recreational license a little bit more, the cost of that a little bit more robust than the medicinal?
From what I watched in that video, we can apparently charge reasonable fees, and there are some reasonable fees that go from $50 to $24,000. So I don't know. It all depends. It's supposed to be related to cost and enforcement and all those things.
With that kind of latitude, understanding that it could, if we decided to. Reasonable is something that could be interpreted, and somebody could get upset and try to stick their lawyer on us. So we'd have to accept that as a council and a planning board to say that if we feel like that might be a way to kind of opt in for everything, but when we're having a discussion. What was? Did I hear $400? I don't remember. $400 is the medicinal licensing.
200 or 250.
250.
Liquor. It's usually 200, 250.
Yeah, okay.
It seems like keeping the fees commensurate with the towns that are around that allow it might be the right thing to do too.
Right.
Yeah,
It sounds to me like we're pretty much in agreement on whether or not there should be a cap, but I think that this question about a fee or licensing fee is a good one, because we can use the licensing fee rather than capping the number of places that we have. We can use the licensing fee the same way other towns and other states regulate liquor selling. So it can still help with that cap, because I think one of the things that we've skirted around but haven't really hit the point on is the fact that a lot of this has to do with perception and how will it affect the other businesses and residential areas in Lisbon if all of a sudden there are 7 weed selling stores on Main Street. There are already there's already one.
I think we're going to have no problem adding more food trucks to the Warumbo site. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that.
So Dennis, let me ask you a question then, while you still got battery life. In fact, I don't feel, in my opinion, when we set this back 2 years ago to be able to get us to here is actually generated more. If we were to set the fee, it's the same level for recreational. Am I oversimplifying that, or would I expect the same people to come out of the woodwork?
I think if you were asking my opinion, I would support a higher fee for recreation.
Like $1,000.
The possibilities of the club.
I would just like to say, knowing these businesses, they are flush with cash. They can afford almost any fee you put out.
Yep.
It's a great point, Sean.
Well, it's just you're comparing. I mean, you could probably make an argument to support the medical side is for medical, so you keep the fees low. But the adult use side, I'd make that argument and charge more. But
$1,000.
Well, and we could go one step further here in thinking about this. Lisa brought something up, and it kind of made me think about with the fees that we set. If we're trying to make sure that we're discouraging the fly-by-night folks who want to just drop up an umbrella and cash in for as quick as they can while this thing happens, I think the way we do that, the folks who have more long-term plans to build a business would be to create higher fees and then give a portion of it back in the form of a rebate or whatever, however we want to call it, whatever it is, after a year here, or, after 12 months, you get X amount back. And then I don't know what that looks like if we want to make it, if they give 1,000, but right now we're charging $250 for medicinal and for regular liquor license, but you get $750 of it back if you're still here with us after 12 months kind of thing.
How about the idea that an initial fee is 1,000, and then when they renew the following year, it drops to 500. You know what I mean? So you could actually do that in the sense of just staggered. Your renewal is cheaper than your initial. Because there's a lot more less work for the planning board on the renewal.
Yes.
John?
I think you're being way too cheap on this $1,000 fee. I'm thinking you could easily get a $10,000. I am not kidding. $10,000.
That's true
for many of them. And I would give any of it back. I would just take $10,000 as your fee to get in. That's going to cost for law enforcement, everything else. And also the benefit of not capping is they're going to these storefronts. They're investing in building up these storefronts. If they don't last and they go out of business, we have a nicer building now for a new business to take over. So they're investing in those locations, making it look nice. So let them put in that 10 grand to get in. Let them build up the business. It doesn't work out, they leave. We got a nicer building for the next 10 to come in, and we made some cash to help pay for law enforcement, regulation, and everything else.
Or you could split that. You could use a higher fee and do like California is doing, requiring medical marijuana dispensaries to put up surety bonds. So if they default or created the problem for the public good, the bond is recaptured by the municipality to pay off the costs.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and me too.
Better than refunds, no. I don't give refunds.
You don't give refunds.
No.
I'd like to add that I definitely think that, the long term is important. And I do like the fact, whatever the fee is, the first year is a larger amount, the second year is less, and the third year is even less, is my thought. Because we're looking at 3 years or more. If we're looking to cap business, that's just my personal opinion. I'd like to see whatever you want the normal fee to be that 3-year fee. And then it drops, like if you want it to be 500, well, on a regular basis, that's their 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year, it's always 500. But their 2nd year is 1,000 and their 1st year is 1,500. I'm just throwing out, whatever you want that fee to be. The idea is to keep longevity and get rid of those fly-by-nights. So I don't care what the fee is, but I'd prefer to see that, whatever everybody agrees it, or council or whatever to be, that 3rd year on would be that fee, and that you just double it and then triple it and get that going. That's my suggestion.
Anybody on council actually opposed to setting the recreational fee higher than medical?
The only thing I would say is I don't disagree with all those things that have been said. It's just that we definitely need to look around and see what everybody else is doing. We don't want to be the cheapest guy around to do this.
If everyone else does 10,000, we don't want to do 1,000. Lowball it.
Exactly. We will have plenty of business.
I can support the 10,000. I definitely can support that.
Portland does 10,000. I did talk to Jason Smith a while ago, and he pays 10,000 for medical and 10,000 for recreational. And he was not even opposed to paying 5,000 each. He thought it was a little ridiculous that we charge so cheap, and he thinks that if we charge more, you keep the fly-by-nights out. It'll just be more people that actually are going to be in this for the long haul. I think we need to be at $5,000 or at least the recreation to start with, not going back. And he has no problem paying more. He didn't really want to pay 10 grand like he does in Portland, but he thinks the 250, you're just going to get a lot of fly-by-night for that one. So we need to up both, I believe. If we're not getting any tax revenue but property tax, and we want to cap this needs to have some kind of revenue from it, not just $250 and then we're going to have one in every corner. And I'm not for that. Even though I see all your town councils for that, but myself and probably some of the guys on planning board, having a cap would be nice for 6 months and then re-seeing it there. And we do need to go back and change and see where in a rural area we can let them grow, because right now it's just starting to pop up too close to residential, because some of that commercial and village is next to residential. We need to get any kind of grow operation farther out in the wilderness, away from more people, more like fields or whatever else. But I think we do need, as of right now, up those fees every year.
Right.
To make it
All right,
profitable.
Kurt, from your perspective, we answered the first question where the council at this time isn't looking to limit the number. They're still about the market sorting it out. I've got a consensus amongst the council to actually set the fee higher than currently in place for the medicinal. The last item that I heard that needs to be discussed is the difference of what we're doing currently with cultivation. What do we need to do to frame that?
The cultivation, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, but I read or heard 2 or 3 times listening to that webinar that we could regulate business marijuana growers for medical purposes. And she said it's not in the ordinance or in the statute, but it can be regulated. That needs to be addressed because it's been one of those things that it's been on the fringes all along. The other thing is, for medical marijuana, there's no restriction on putting a building anywhere. The only restriction is on where the sign can be. And so that needs to be addressed. Right now in the park, Capitol Park, the marijuana grow that's going to go on there, if it turns into recreational, has a 1,000-foot limit to the schools that are there. We can change it to 500. But anyway, whatever we do, we have some ordinances to address just to get the things straightened out before we decide we're going to do anything.
Yeah, it's going to take some planning board work and to revisit it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, does anybody know, has MMA put out a template ordinance yet?
Yes, I forget what it is. No, I'm the only one I know of is on solar.
No, I'll try to look that up.
Also, what do you do with previously existing unsanctioned grow operations?
They're going to be unlicensed, right? I think we'll have to take enforcement action, and they're going to have to be licensed. They can't be grandfathered. They were never approved or permitted to begin with.
Right.
And the second thing is they put the new rules and are trying to put the new rules in place. And I don't know if it'll be successful, but they're requiring tagging of medical marijuana plants through the grow operations all the way to the customer. So that's a different twist. And I know there's a lot of objection to it, but that's what they're trying to do. So in that case, you could chase it back.
Can I ask a question on enforcement? I think I heard something different than I thought was in place. Dennis, I thought that enforcement was actually something that was between the state and the caregiver.
No, it'd still be the local municipality if it's in a zone, because they don't get into zone regulations with the town.
So, right, which is why but if, other than land use chart, what other enforcement is expected of you, I guess?
It's going to take, it would take police as well, correct? You know, we'd send violation notice, and we'd probably have to get the town attorney involved to give it some strength if they were running an illegal grow operation. And then we notify the state, and hopefully the state would come up and support it too.
Strictly the location where it's at, right? Or is it, because it's also an unlicensed business, which is the second piece, which is
correct.
Which is why we went that licensing procedure annually, so we at least knew who was in our perimeter operating officially. Because if you're not, you're outside of that, to be able to trigger those enforcement issues with you and police to go to the state.
Well, we said we have 4 now, correct?
Right.
Right.
But that's what, right.
The OMB, the OMP office said that you can, codes enforcement, particularly codes enforcement, can call and say, I have a grow operation over here doing this. Are they okay with the state? And you can get an answer to that. They'll tell you, yes, they're registered, or no, they're not.
Nice. I haven't done that yet.
We can, I think we can start to kind of figure out where the right place to land for a fee by gathering data from, I'm just going to use Colorado, California, some of the places that have recreational. I'm sure there's some data that we can get that helps understand what the increased expense was to law enforcement and code enforcement. We should be able to at least get some general numbers, you know, percentage. We saw our budget increase from this to this in these areas. So it can kind of give us sort of, you know, a rough idea of what we can anticipate. And then maybe that'll help us at Mark to understand what kind of, is this going to be a tidal wave? Is this just going to be kind of a swell? You know, what can we expect? And we were in Maine too. So whatever data we gather from larger areas, it's not, you know, we're going to have to, you know, temper that with the idea of our population and what has happened around us. So
I can't think of an enforcement issue we've had with the ones that have been here for, you know, as Fern mentioned, going on 3 years now, you know. So I don't know if it's had an impact, but we'd have to check with the chief police, see if they had any records of any issues. But
what about the unlicensed associated with that? Are they just doing it? So we could go all this point to anybody that comes forward to be able to do it, but we got no teeth to be able to get those unlicensed businesses the hell out of our town. What good is it?
Well, if the state would back me up, like Don just mentioned, that's one approach is report them and get the state to come in. Because honestly, the local side, they're not quite sure what to do, you know.
I think it's worth a phone call to them.
Yes.
They seem to be very helpful up there. There's some changes in the law, so it's more friendly to us.
It's better now. The fact is, to this point, it's been wait and see until recreational is here. Well, recreational is here. It's time to start engaging those other operations to get them the heck out of the.
Chair, what I would ask too is when we, I know we're going to be running out of time. We have to get set up for the other meeting, and but I would like to probably kind of, if we do actually as a council actually say that we're entertaining the idea of going recreational, I would like to have the planning board have the how would I say, the forefront of actually setting up a proper schedule for where this could be grown and not. I mean, and you know, I agree. I mean, the idea of being out in a country setting in a bigger facility that's not an industrial park is okay as long as it meets the criteria. But right now we're not allowing that for anything. So that's going to be a whole new look on what that looks like, you know, whether it's outside grow, indoor grow. I think there's a big difference between that and then the manufacturing of it. I mean, not manufacturing, but the idea of the testing and that part of it. So, I mean, was there 4 different categories that we approved or 3?
We have 5 categories now, I believe, 4. I'm not looking at my land chart, but
I mean, I guess I'd leave it up to the planning board to actually kind of figure that out. I mean, the downfall is, you know, knowing what the community is and what we actually have for available space. I mean, I think the Capitol Avenue down the industrial park is, you know, I think we're starting to overlap some of the businesses there that's being it's good to be seeing it used, but there's no more space down there to expand it other than the buildings that are actually already going. Our commercial zone in town has really been limited, right? You know, we don't have a whole lot of commercial left anymore. So to figure out where that goes and do it constructively, I think is really important, you know? So I think the idea of opening a retail space, I think is much easier to determine than the idea of where the grow would be. And from what I've heard, one of the biggest challenges of this whole recreational thing is the idea of having a grow to sustain your storefront, right? So they actually come hand in hand. So one of the things that we're talking about is that licensing. Is that for like the whole gamut, or is that just for the retail space and you got a licensing almost as equal for a grow operation? You know, how that structure is. I mean, I think that's important. How is it right now? So if someone comes in for a grow versus a retail space, is that same dollar as far as for the
It's called a retail, it's called a caregiver license, which allows the grow and the retail store under that one license category. So it's lumped into one.
Yeah, but we could separate that because we may have people coming in that strictly just want to do a grow, right?
That's what I've been trying to figure out what we need to do, I think, so we can separate the grow from the retail store to give us some different land use options on where they can be located.
I think that's a planning board thing. I mean, as a council, I mean, I think our own, as a council member myself, I feel our only responsibility is kind of give the green light whether or not we're entertaining the idea of actually supporting it as a community, you know. But when it comes to the idea of figuring out the best places, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but does the planning board feel that's kind of in their wheelhouse, or?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Kurt, have you heard enough out of us? Do you have the planning board chair enough to be able to move this forward with all the public input and everything that we had for medicinal? Any other questions that anybody has on the topic that haven't already been fleshed out, or any other?
Yeah, the only question I have is I know that Dennis would be getting phone calls saying when this is going to happen. Are we putting a timeline on this? Is this something we think is going to happen within this year? I mean, I guess the planning board would be the ones that actually give us that lead because of what's already on their you know, the docket for upcoming stuff.
I do get the phone calls, and I just leave it that I don't have an answer for them on a time frame. So we haven't opted in on adult use. We've opted in on medical, and right now that's where it's at. They don't push much further. A lot of them are prodding phone calls from out-of-state companies that are checking. And then the ones that really want to open will follow up with me and push a little harder. So,
Kurt, to that point, what would be the immediate priorities for the planning board to give us an idea on potential timeline?
Yes, I think so. I think we need to be clear about who goes first. Do the council needs to approve opting in, or do we need to come up with regulations prior to that?
You definitely don't want to opt in before you get regulations. That's a bad thing, because you get somebody end up on your doorstep immediately.
But do we do all the work on that if it doesn't get opted in?
Right.
But that's why you're asking council.
Right. I think we can give you a straw poll vote of at least that there's an intent of the council to move forward if the planning board returns a good document to us.
Yeah. Is there anyone on the council that does not want to see move forward? I guess is a better answer, right? To that question.
It was all boiled down to a land use chart last time to be able to do it. So I would be entertaining that, because again, that was what you guys at the planning board level spent 3 to 6 months after all the other time that I know you guys you were the most versed on this topic over the last 2 years. The fact it was easy from our perspective. I don't see, I wouldn't. I'm all for opting in as long as you guys give us the direction where it should be best utilized.
Rename Route 9 the Green Mile, or a couple miles.
Well, that's one of the side discussions. It was a whole farmers market kind of approach for what we had to look at. That does that cultivate, or is that actually production? I remember that dialogue in a planning.
What is the bike path through Maine called, Don? The one that actually goes through
Sunrise Trail.
What's the name of the trail?
Isn't it the one that goes way down east? The
Greenways.
Sunrise Trail.
Greenways Trail, right? So
Yeah.
we participate in that, so we're all good.
Little did you know.
So is this
Do you
possible
think
that you
the-
allow the planning board to come up also with the fees? Is that something we can tackle also? And
That's
present something
council.
like a package?
Yeah, council.
Our fees would be
That's to
our
make a recommendation, but adoption of fees, that actually is a council action that has to go with the fee policy, fee schedule, I should say, for the entire town. Jeff shared with the group, everybody just should have seen it.
Yeah, I just saw
Yeah.
that.
It looks good.
So I asked him to email that out to everybody as well too, so at least we got a basis, but clearly there seems to be latitude to be able to say that it's significantly different than what we're doing for medicinal right now.
I just feel like if we're gonna do this, we're not gonna do this for pennies on a dollar. I mean, if we're gonna go this route, let's step up and do it like how everybody else is. I mean, we're gonna get flooded with a lot of people because no town around us is gonna do this. So we're gonna get swamped. If we're gonna get swamped, we need to be charging appropriately, not.
I think I hear what you're saying, Chris. I think that message was received loud and clear by me. And I think that coupled with Sean's recommendation about these businesses being flush with cash, I think that made me maybe rethink that fee structure and that there's an opportunity there for us to do a couple of things. Maybe, generate some revenue since we're not going to generate it in other ways, but we thought we might. And then also to be able to allow to, make sure that we're not getting those fly-by-nights. So I hear you loud and clear, and I'd like to think the rest of the council does as well.
No, you could look at something, does the school run a DARE program still or something similar? You could also look at designating a fee towards that program for the school as well too. So there could be some ways to justify some fees,
I don't see the education budget on weed. You can do anything.
Oh,
I don't
maybe
see
that's
why
what you
the
need to do. Your new fee, your startup fee will go to a DARE program. That could be a smaller fee. But then your yearly fee will be something bigger that goes to the municipality part of it.
Alan, I don't know how you feel, but I don't know why the planning board, if they're going to do this structural work for this, why not do the research for the fees and come up with a recommendation for the council at least?
That is what I said. They can make a recommendation.
Is that what you said?
That is.
It is.
Okay.
We'll start drafting documents and send them to you.
Yeah, no, by all means. And Kurt, I don't know what you guys also have for competing goals for the committee, but
This is one of them.
Yeah, here, you write this one down.
communicate it through Dawn, because you guys have a strong liaison to be able to make it work for whatever you guys have for a timeline. So we'll work with you.
You want to set a time frame for getting it done?
No. You haven't set up who's writing this yet.
What Dennis said, exactly.
Dennis is.
What's the chances we could get Zoom meetings for the planning board? That's the only committee I've been on that we haven't yet. We had always meet in person. I feel like we could get a little more done in extra time if we could do the same thing with a Zoom meeting just for the planning board.
You just like to ride your truck around. Chris, you just like to ride your truck around and play in your truck while you watch Zoom meetings.
Well, yeah. But to his point, the Zoom actually is the town of Lisbon's account that's supposed to be used for anything. So it's simple to be able to deploy this through Dennis, to be able to make it work for whatever you guys want. One of the things that we've said through this entire thing, through all the closures, is first things first, workplace safety. And the committees and the councils that we represent for the town, it's all the same goal, sir. So by all means.
Public hearings are very difficult to figure out.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. This was a pain in the ass. We put it off almost a month just to get to this place because we were hopeful to be able to go back to in-person meetings for the same reason. Because
I think workshops are one thing, but the formal meetings are much more difficult in my mind. To answer Chris's question, it's a public hearing. I haven't figured out how to do it right and give everybody just.
Yeah.
But
by all means, Dennis, we have an executive session coming up, and it's the same thing. Well, fine, I'll meet you at the town hall at 6 o'clock. We'll be done by 7 for the regular meeting because I haven't figured out how to be able to run one of those.
All right, I'm going to cut in. I'm 5-minute warning for the next meeting. Just want to give everybody, in case anybody has to make a pit stop before we
Thanks a
start.
lot for this meeting. Thank you.
5 minutes to roll one up.
I think we have a clear idea of what we need to work on, and I think it's much easier now that we've had this group meeting, and I'm glad we were able to do it.
Appreciate it. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
This is World 2. Twyla, why don't you start with attendance?
Okay, Councilor Albert? Councilor LaRochelle?
Here.
Councilor Ward?
Here.
Councilor Lund?
Here.
Councilor Ganong?
Here.
Councilor Kobe? Councilor Fellows?
Here.
I think Cassie just came on.
Yep. And Norm should be right behind us. Next item, we'll have Mr. Albert join us in process.
Are we gonna do the flag, or are we doing the next item?
I'm sorry, Mr. Actually, we're gonna have to dispense with that because it's usually, anybody got an American flag in their presence? We usually rely on, Cassie's got it. Oh, there it is, Diane.
Cassie
Thank
left.
you, Jen. Yeah, exactly. Now that we got Cassie running through her house. Good.
Oh, you got two flags.
Good job, Cassie.
Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
Of the United
of the United States of America.
to the republic
Republic,
It stands.
which stands one nation,
One
under
nation.
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty and
and
justice for all.
Thank you all. All right. Next item.
Good news and recognition.
Any counselors have anything they'd like to share on that item, please? Seeing none, moving right along. Next item.
Public hearing, manufacturing medical marijuana and retail store license for Crystal Spring Healing Alternatives LLC. Those listening from Town Hall live video streaming are now invited to send written comments by emailing award@lisbonme.org. Councilor Ward will review emails at this time.
I have nothing on this end, but for the listening public, if I do receive anything throughout the course of the meeting, just like any other meeting, I will enter it into the record at any time. So seeing none, we got nobody that's actually on this, so I will open and close the public hearing. Next item.
Audience participation and response for agenda items. Those listening from Town Hall live video streaming are now invited to send written comments by emailing award@lisbonme.org. Councilor Ward will review emails at this time.
I got nothing still, so moving right along. Next item.
Council,
Thank you, sorry.
all right, consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be considered for adoption by one motion with no separate discussion unless a councilor requests an item be removed for immediate discussion. Any councilor wishing to remove an item may do so now. Seeing none, order 2021-12 to approve the municipal accounts payable warrants for $239,864.89. Municipal payroll warrants for $143,027.42. School accounts payable warrants for $152,167.32. School payroll warrants for $735,013.98. Workshop minutes for January 5th, 2021. Pole permit for pole number 122H, Lewiston Road, also known as Route 196. Set public hearing for February 2nd for special entertainment permit for the Railroad Restaurant and Pub. Approve manufacturing medical marijuana and retail store license for Crystal Spring Healing Alternative LLC. Tax collector's settlement, which includes authorization to approve and sign the certificate of settlement for Diane Barnes, tax collector for the fiscal year 2020 taxes.
I need a motion.
Make that motion.
I need a second. I got a first and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Albert? Councilor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Councilor Ward?
Yes.
Councilor Lunt?
Yes.
Councilor Ganong?
Yes.
Councilor Colby?
Yes.
Councilor Fellows?
Yes.
Order passed 6-0.
Next item, please.
Council orders, resolutions, and ordinances. Order 2021-13, Upper Dam Sabatis River Restoration Update.
We have Casey Clark with us from the Department of Marine Resources on the call tonight, so I'll turn it over to him.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan, and thank you all for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we're good.
Great. Well, I just want to report back on a couple of things that the council had asked for and then give an update on where we are with funding and progress for the project. So the 4 items that the council had asked of me at the last meeting were that all material from the site be removed once the dam is removed. So that's all concrete material. This is a comment related to the Millstream Dam removal where some of the concrete was left on site. So we're making sure that that's included in all engineering plans going forward. So make sure that all that material is removed. We've also talked with Randy Sire about potentially removing some of that concrete as long as it's clean to the fill or to the town landfill. Council also asked for us to determine how much water drop would be anticipated at the dam removal. We're still working on a definitive answer for that. We have found some old data for a feasibility report that was mostly completed, and we got all the data from that report. And I've handed that over to our new engineer, and we're looking at that currently. I do think that the water will, drop some at the site. I don't think that it's going to drop any more than what we saw when the dam breached, and that was back in 2013 or 2014. But we will expect the water to drop a little bit more because of how flat the river is, meaning that it doesn't really gain a lot of elevation between the town of Lisbon all the way up to the pond up at Sabatis Pond there. That we do think that the river is still going to be relatively flat water, that you could put a canoe out on it and paddle in that area if you wanted to after dam removal, but it's likely just going to be a bit of a narrower channel than it is currently. So it is going to drop, and we will give you a definitive answer on that as soon as the engineer has an opportunity to finish his assessment there. The council also asked that I put together a history and purposes of the dams, and I have a draft of that that I'll get out to the Lisbon History Society here by the end of the week. And then once they've approved it, then I'll send it off to the council for you all to review as well. Once that's to your approval, we'd love to have an opportunity to put that up on the town website so that the public can see the history of the sites. And this is both the Upper Town Dam as well as the Farwell Dam. And all of the industry that was associated with those sites. It is really interesting to find that it seems that not the building that was directly adjacent to the Upper Town Dam, but the one that was just a little bit downstream of it is recorded as being potentially the first wool mill that was in Maine, potentially, which is really interesting and exciting to find out that there's a lot of history associated with the buildings that used to be next to those dams. So once that's completed, I'll send it over to the council. And then the final was that the council asked that I contact landowners adjacent to the river to let them know about our intent, DMR's intent for removing the dam, and talk to those landowners before we move forward with it. I've talked to the 3 adjacent landowners that are directly adjacent to the Upper Town Dam. That's the Chinese restaurant, the insurance office, and the attorney's office that are all right there. And working to get more contact with them. There's been a little bit of a struggle with COVID things going on, as well as a bit of a language barrier with one of the owners. So we're working through that. The insurance owner, Mr. LaRoche himself, was happy to talk with us and happy to see that we're wanting to do something with the dam there. He did say he's going to be, quote unquote, sad to see his dam go, but at the same time has just enjoyed the site and would love to see it return to a river. So seems like things are positive there. We're happy to continue making contact with other landowners. Again, because of COVID and sort of restrictions that I have on me by the state, it's a little bit challenging, but I'll plan to at least get out mailers and go knock on doors at some point here in the next month or two to make contact with those landowners. And then finally, we also have an update on funding for actually removing the dams. And this is the big piece and the reason why Dan thought it was a great idea for me to come on and update the town. And that's that we put in for a grant proposal this last summer and then received word in November that it was that they liked our proposal and wanted to work through an award with us for dam removal for both the Upper Town Dam as well as the Farwell dams. The timeline that they're like us to meet for that would be removing the Upper Town Dam in 2021. So that would be this summer for the removal, and then removal of the Farwell Dam on 2022, as well as building a fishway at that Farwell Dam site in 2022. So I realize that that's quick. The really upside great thing to this is that DEP has been working really closely with the owners of the Bonafide landfill, and that this fits perfectly with them to be able to move forward with their plans and get that landfill cleaned up as quickly as possible as well. So they'd be looking at potentially doing some restoration and cleanup and closure of the landfill following in 2022 or 2023. So it's quick, but it also gets to a point of cleaning up that site and getting all these things sort of figured out. So with that, I'll stop and sort of leave an opportunity for questions or other comments at this point.
Anybody questions of Casey?
For me, Chair, you did answer one as far as the idea, because that was the big thing of the Mill Street Dam coming down was the coordination with DEP as far as the cleanup on the landfill. And as that river goes down, the more that's going to be exposed. Do they have a definite timeline, do you know, about actually cleaning that up? Because they actually felt pretty good about just removing the Mill Street Dam, that was going to actually help them move forward with it.
Yeah, the DEP is at this point assisting the owner of that landfill site. And I say it that way because DEP doesn't have control over the timeline of it. What they're doing is everything they can to get them to voluntarily do it as soon as possible. At some point, it could go into the point where there's legal action that would require the company to do it on a timeline, or may become the responsibility of DEP. But at this point, there's a voluntary partner, the owner of that landfill, which is one of a few companies that were involved in it over the years, and sort of the last one, unfortunately, holding the bag. But I've been in a couple of meetings with them to talk about timelines and to talk about how dam removal would potentially affect things there. And at this point, they do not want to move forward until the Farwell Dam is either rebuilt to be stable or removed entirely. And so that is what's driving their sort of timeline at this point, that they don't want to do a cleanup more than once. They want to do it once, and they don't want to do it right. And they're worried that if the dam somehow broke in the next 10 or 20 years, that they'd have to come back and do another cleanup. And so they are more than willing to work with us. They did sound like they were hopeful that maybe after we give them the full design plans for Farwell removal, that they'd be able to finish their plans and then get a definitive timeline. And all those plans have to be approved by DEP and some federal Army Corps of Engineers regulators for digging in a river and doing that sort of work. So
the other question was, it's odd because, I mean, as this always evolves, because, I mean, during the Mill Street project, there was never, DEP was all on board about cleaning up that site, and it had nothing to do with the Farwell Dam at that point in time. So it's curious to add that they actually added that Farwell Dam in as being a requirement for them to do it that wasn't mentioned when they did the Mill Street. But again, that's one of those things that maybe I just didn't pick up on it. But
I think,
go ahead, sorry.
If I could, Fern, I think that there's potential that you're confusing a couple of things. When DEP cleaned up the contaminants at the Mill Street Dam, they're cleaning up mercury that was in the river from another, so owned by the same folks, Miller Industries at one point on both of those sites. But next to the Mill Street Dam, there was mercury that had contaminated the stream, and so that was the primary driver for DEP at that site.
Yep, they actually talked about the bona fide site at the same time, that the idea of the water level coming down was actually going to help them upstream too, I thought. But either way, the other question is so the Fowell Dam, even though you breached the dam, you remove it, you still got to put a fishway in. So was that never actually an actual access for the fish to come upstream naturally? Or I guess I'm questioning why there needs to be a fish ladder once the dam's removed, if originally it was actually suitable for the fish to come upstream without it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there were fish that went up the river at some point. The thing that happens in a lot of places in Maine and in a lot of other places too is that you build a dam where it's opportunistic, where you have a good foundation. And so what they did was they built the dam on top of the bedrock that you see kind of just below the dam now. And then they actually diverted the river over to where the dam is currently and up next to where the mill building is. And so in talking with our engineer, who also has a geologist on staff, he thinks that the river actually used to run behind where the Leda property is, so further to the north of sort of as soon as you go underneath the Webster Street Bridge, it would have made a turn and go north and then come down the channel, sort of right next to where the landfill is now. So the easy answer there, and I apologize for getting wordy about this, is that the river isn't where it used to be. It used to be in a different place where fish could swim up more easily. But because of where the buildings are and where people live now, not feasible to put it back where it used to be.
Yeah, my dad actually remembers that site. Well, he's passed now, but he used to tell me that used to be a swimming area for the town because it was the widest part of the river before they put the landfill in. So it did divert. The question, another question with that too, and sorry to have so many, is once they put that fishway in, I know when there's a dam operation as a fishway, it's pretty high maintenance in a sense. The idea of keeping it clean and keeping it maintained and keeping it going, and who would be responsible for the fishway? Is that something that your organization actually maintains that regularly, or?
Yep, that's a really good question. And for this site, I think we likely would. DMR likely would. So we have a number of different fishways throughout the state that we maintain, and so we know exactly what that maintenance requires. Generally, with a lot of the new fishways that we've been putting in over the last decade or 2 decades, we're looking for a local partner who is either going to be operating the harvest, if there's a harvest on alewives or something like that, and they would be the person who'd be maintaining that fishway, cleaning it out in the spring and making sure that all the boards in place, things like that. But for this site, because there isn't, an obvious either harvester or lake association or something else along those lines, I think that the Department of Marine Resources would be the likely candidate for that. And since we're the ones who are building it, it would be our responsibility, and I certainly wouldn't follow the town for that. The other thing I do want to say is that when we're looking at fishways, the typical fishway that people think about is sort of that concrete ladder structure. There's other more what they call nature-like fishways, which would just be more like steps carved into the bedrock or something else along those lines, and those are a lot less maintenance. And so we're looking at options like that as well, just to make sure that it's an easy site to maintain, for perpetuity. So.
One last question is I know a lot of the waterways actually years ago have actually had rights. So some of the mills or the hydro dams had actually had water rights to the passage of the water. Is it now on the Spathis River is it no more privately owned water rights through that river? Is it all just now natural state run? I mean, there's no more rights to the waterway at all. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, so water rights and this is not my expertise, for instance, I'm getting a little bit of a guess here from what I do know. So I do know that there's minimum flow requirements out of most dams in the state now, and there is a minimum flow requirement out of the control structure at the Sleeper Dam, which is the outlet for the Sabattis Pond. So they're required that they have to pass, X amount of flow continuously, and that's to make sure that they don't dry up the river to maintain it for fish habitat or for insects and things like that. Beyond that, I am pretty sure that people don't own water rights in that same way, with the exception of maybe for agriculture, which is out of my wheelhouse, and I wouldn't know the answer to. So as far as I know, there's no one on the river currently who does own water rights besides just the sort of restrictions that the outlet dam, has to meet.
I have a question. and a relatively simple one. What are we going to see when the upper dam is removed? I know you said the water level is not going to go down much, but there's a lot of concrete there and a lot of water behind it. So I was just wondering what we're going to see.
Yeah, that's a good question, Don. So if we removed all the concrete today, you would not necessarily lower the bedrock that's there, because where it's breached already, it's already down to bedrock on that river right-hand side. All that you're doing is opening up to allow more water through at the same time, right? You're making the channel wider. I think that even though we're removing, the remaining 2/3 of the dam, eventually that piece of the river is probably going to narrow down just a little bit, just because of how much water's in the area. So it's certainly going to open up and allow more flow and drop the river by, I would assume, a foot or two at what you would see for sort of like mid or higher flows. But I think that what you're likely to see once you actually remove it is going to be the same thing that you see sort of below Farwell right now, which is, a slow meandering river with pieces of bedrock poking out here and there, and then, big pools in places as well. And we have a few cross sections of the river that show us what depths are in the river, going up to a little over a mile upstream of the Upper Town Dam. And those really show us that right now, even though if the water dropped by a foot or two, you would still have pools that are 8 or 10 feet deep, because there's pools that are 12 or 14 or 16 feet deep that are in the river right now. And that's just because of how the bedrock and the morphology of the river looks now. So I think that the biggest difference you're going to see is that it's going to be a few feet wider. And so if you go out there and you look at the river now upstream of the Upper Town Dam, you see that area where next to the river bank, it's a little bit less steep for a little bit, and you have all those new riparian plants that are in there, and those have all sort of recolonized after the breach happened in 2013. And so I think that all you're really going to see is you're going to see that slope continue out for another foot or two, so just narrowing up the channel a little bit, but not necessarily changing it into, it's not going to change it into a whitewater river or something like that. It's honestly going to be pretty slow flowing as it is now, but just a little bit narrower.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I got a question. When we spoke the other day, we were talking about where the gas line next to the hotel there, where that crosses. Did you ever find the depth that's underneath the water?
Yep. So the depth that was surveyed at that area is only 4 feet, I think, or something along those lines, Randy. So if it did drop by 2 feet, you'd have 2 feet excess. I did have a call back from, I have to look it up. It's not in front of me right now, but I believe it's Northern Gas Works, the company who owns the gas line. And that gas line was put in, they said, in somewhere between 96 and 98. And when they put that in, they believe that they put it in by drilling underneath the river. And so it's actually a buried gas line. So he said that it should be underneath 20 feet or so of whatever is there, and that they wouldn't have laid something that was above the substrate in the river. I haven't been out there to confirm it for myself, and Chris from the company was going to give me a call back tomorrow and hopefully send over their built as design specs. So as soon as I have those, Randy, I'm happy to share them with you. But I think that I'm really glad you brought that up last week. I think that is not going to be a concern, though.
All right.
The question that I had was, I'm sorry, it's what I do for a living. What's the project estimate for this in your timeline for the removal of both these dams and putting in the fishway?
The time estimate or the cost estimate?
Both.
Sure. Yeah. So the time estimate it would be 3 years of funding. We'd look at removal of the Upper Town Dam in 2021, removal of the Farwell Dam and Fish Passage in 2022. And then the final year would be monitoring, testing, making sure that everything is cleaned up, wrapped up, and reporting back to our funding agency. And the funding agency is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. The cost estimate for the Upper Town Dam, we estimate would be somewhere around $200,000 to $250,000. It could be a bit less than that. It really honestly depends on what contractor bids come in at. For the Farwell Dam and the Fishway, we estimated that it would be around $1.2 million for all the work that would need to be done down there. Again, those are estimates. We think that and because we're the state agency, we'll have to go through a competitive bid process for any of these things. So look at those bids actually coming in to be the ultimate decider on those things. But that's our funding estimates.
Timeline for first part of this going out, I'm assuming it's gonna be a public input piece of it ahead of that, so what does that look like?
Do you mean in terms of like public outreach before?
Yeah, is there a public hearing process, like bridge removals and that type of stuff that would actually be in this location? Or are we selling that here for that?
If you want a public outreach process, we can do that. There is not a formal public hearing process or something else along those lines for dams of this sort.
Because it's not a requirement, that's why I was, okay. Any other questions with Casey, guys? Again, what I would say coming from the council's perspective is, given the feedback that you clearly heard to us from the last dam to now, I appreciate all your effort. Anything that we can on the communication in the forefront is going to make it a much easier transition as you go through this process for sure.
What's the next step, Alan?
He's here for informational, so I guess the question I would have, Casey, is there a next step that we have to do anything on your behalf?
As the owner of the dam, at some point, would like permission to remove it. You know, that's the big piece that I would like from the town. I don't know what your town process is for that, and so I think that piece is to some degree up to you, Alan. If there's something that I can do, meaning like to put together a proposal for that and present it at the next meeting, I can do that. If it makes it easier for it to be something you can vote on, I guess just let me know how I can assist in that piece.
Well, what's the going price for old dams these days anyways?
Price per ton? Is that what we're talking about? I heard landfill, and Randy needs how many feet down the Warumba?
There you go.
That's all I was thinking. Diane, my question there is there anything that would have to at least ask Dan that we make sure that we get this right from his perspective?
Yeah, I'll double check with him tomorrow. I honestly don't think, I think you've got, just like any other piece of property that you have and you own, you can do what you want with it, but I will double check.
Can you, why don't you delay, Casey, put something in Diane's hands so we can run past legal to be able to see that, make it easier question from Dan's perspective? You've got an agreement, put that in Diane's hands and we can see about getting that on another agenda for you to come back and make that ask of us.
Dan, is it okay if I touch base with you tomorrow, just to make sure that I get the right language together for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Terrific, thank you.
There's nothing else. Thank you for your time tonight, Casey.
Thank you, and thank you for the questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item.
Order 2021-14, fiscal year 2019 Burn Jag grant request.
Good evening. My name is Ryan McGee. I'm the Chief of Police. Requesting the Council's permission. Reference is Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant, commonly referred to as the JAG grant. Police Department has the opportunity to apply for federal funds through this fiscal year 19 Burn Jag grant. Police Department has been pre-allotted a total of $2,967 in grant funding. This particular grant does not require any matching funds. If approved, the Police Department would use this funding to purchase a new mobile radio for one of our cruisers. Our current radios are at the end of their useful lifespan. Some of them are upwards of 15 to 20 years old. And we'd like to start, we have done, and we'd like to continue to get these replaced using grant funding. The Police Department is requesting permission to apply for, accept, and spend any of the funding amount allotted through this grant process towards the above purchase of a radio for the cruisers.
I need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Straightforward.
Yeah, what I would point to, Cassie just got booted for some reason, so she's having connection issues, so this vote may go down 6-0. She'll rejoin us when she can get in, so Brad, if you could just be looking for Cassie, thank you. And there she goes. Roll call, please.
Counselor Albert,
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle, Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Colby, Counselor, Counselor Fellows,
Yes.
order passed 7-0.
Next
Thank you for your
time.
time.
Hey,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, well, Chief here, can I ask him a couple questions, or should?
No,
is that
feel
permitted?
free, please, while we get the benefit of this time.
To Ryan, while you're here, I have two things. One is, how's the generator project coming? Any updates?
Coming outstanding. They're actually moving right along on it. They've got they are moving right along. The generator's not here yet, but they are moving along. So, very professional company.
That's awesome. I've only heard good things, so that's awesome. I think we're the right people. Second one is, I'm not sure if since Chief or the dispatch, if you're aware of the upper, talking about dams, the one up on the other side of Lewiston. I never knew this until I was part of the community that goes down by the river, that there is actually a disaster plan. So if that dam was ever to breach, and I was told that Lisbon actually has one of the contacts for that. And I'll just give you a reason why. So the other night when we had the big rain and we lost all that snow, it was actually inactive. So I assume that the PD got a phone call at 2:30 in the morning, like I did, alerts and phone calls, and we had yeah. Now, did you get a response back on that, or do you know? Basically, what happens is that there's a certain time of year where the river is so high and the flow is so intense that if the upper dam was to breach, that Lisbon would actually have less than a 1 hour response time to remove everybody down the Davis Street area and downtown, because it would actually pretty much be wiped out. They told me it'd be almost, if you look at the old office building, that would actually be above the second floor windows, the flow of water and debris. That would probably take out the Moxie building and everything down that area from the flow of water and debris that would be coming downstream. And they always said that, it's never happened, but we may actually send an alert out. So at 2:30 in the morning, my phone's going off, and I think it's a record call. And it's actually a mandatory, you need to respond to this now type of thing, that we have met that threshold. If it was the breach, you have less than 1 hour to actually evacuate your presence on the river. I was just wondering if that's the dispatch gets that, or if they have any plan in place to actually get people out from down the Davis Street area to the trailer parks and stuff.
I'm certainly going to look into that.
And if not, it would be one of those things where I remember going through my emergency management workshop night, that they actually talk about desktop type evacuation plans and situations. I would think that would be a great one that maybe we could work with emergency management, maybe with Lisa, to do a desktop type of scenario where if that dam was to breach, how that happened. They told us that night that if you want funding from that organization, the best way is to do a desktop and realize what resources you don't have, and that's one of the best ways of getting funding. But again, it was just one of those things. I was pretty shocked to actually get the phone call, and then after I got a text, and it was actually, you need to respond back to this immediately to actually let us know that you're aware that this is a situation. And I know the town does actually have a connection to that, so I was just curious if that goes to dispatch, or if your officer would know what to do on duty if that was the breach. That's all. Not that it would happen. The dam was built in the early, I guess, 100 years ago or more. So, but
well, unfortunately, this day and age, anything can happen. I will say that I am aware of EMA is in contact with our communication center. So if there's ever any type of emergency down this way, as far as plans, as far as evacuating Davis Street or desktop evacuation plans with EMA, I think that would be a great idea. And I can look into that as well.
Just curious, it was one of those things where it's you never think it's going to happen. I never thought I'd get that phone call in the middle of the night. The idea of actually just getting the water flow at the right level. They said it equaled the typical spring runoff after a winter melt. They said it was one of the higher ones I've actually recorded, and the flow was actually more severe than they've actually had in years as far as some of the flow levels going down to the river.
I do remember when they were working on the dam. If you remember when they were rebuilding the dam and putting the concrete and whatnot, they actually built that retaining wall up higher And if you remember in the springtime, the water levels did come up into the railroad tracks area of Davis Street Park area as well. And you know, it's going to come down to the fire department, police department, and area agencies. But basically, it'd be a reverse 911 would be the simplest, easiest, quickest way, kind of like you got a phone call in order to notify anybody. But we can certainly work on some more ideas.
A quick solution might be to think about, and I've seen this in other communities that have the potential of flash flooding, and that is simple sirens, horns that warn of that. So if there's only an hour, of evacuation time or less, that way, if not everybody, in this day and age, we all count on technology to be right there at our fingertips, but I think of our elderly community, and they don't necessarily subscribe to the same sort of, necessity to their phone as we may in ours. So I would think that simple, having the ability to kind of get that come in and that notice to come in and be able to have one-stop shop for a button and blast a simple, hey, when you hear this, it's time to get the hell out of your house and roll out, grab your cell phone, whatever you can carry, and get out of Dodge. So.
Yeah, that's a great idea to have that in conjunction of, a phone call as well, for the hearing here that might be in that area, or visiting that area. There's a lot of ideas to come up with, but I think this is all excellent information. Bottom line is safety for everybody involved. So I appreciate it, Fern.
Tsunami warning horns work really well.
Anything else? Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Good night. Next time.
Order 2021-15 virtual meetings in February.
We're at that point in the discussion where, Diane, are you feeling any different love than we were in December at this time? My gut says that we're looking at same for February and put it in the last meeting in February as a placeholder for March, in my opinion.
Okay.
Can I change your opinion?
We had your meeting scheduled. That is
That's one. I need 3 in the month of February.
Okay, so let me ask.
What's the difference? Will we meet in person to do that, or we meet in person to do just an executive session?
Do you think we have the capacity to be able to meet the criteria to be able to do so? Would you be comfortable going back to in-person meetings, Don? I guess that's the question I would ask.
Well, I work at Lowe's every day and wear a mask, and nobody around me has gotten COVID, so what can I say?
Right. Well, that's just it. And what I would say in that regard too is that Lewiston City Hall hasn't closed, Lisbon hasn't closed in that regard. The difference between the two is that I know we, as a council, have actually been more receptive to the in-person meetings versus Lewiston that's actually been virtual since March. So it can be as little or as much as we choose to be able to do so. I very much appreciate Diane, Brett, and Twyla's efforts combined, facilitating meetings that actually get that balance to be able to get the staff input for what we need to be able to do and meet the CDC guidelines for a number of people in the area. As long as we are not relaxing the standard that says public safety or workplace safety is the primary here, I'm okay with either way. So if you're advocating for Don, I can reverse that. I want to make sure that what would be the wishes of the rest. Norm?
If we're going live, as long as we limit our meetings, not to midnight.
Yeah, well, the 2-hour rule should be in effect to begin with. In fact, we've only violated it twice in 4 years, but they're all bad, no matter what it is. So by all means, to your point, if we have executive sessions that needed to be done, Don, you need to keep us to task and we need to stay on the reservation, to quote a former counselor, because when we stray off, the time just goes off and it's not productive.
Gotcha.
Okay?
I'm gonna come out on the other side of this and support continued Zoom meetings. The increase in cases that we've seen consistently, they're at the highest level they've ever been in the state of Maine. There's nothing to say that trend's gonna reverse anytime in the near future. So I am not a supporter of the in-person meetings at this time. I think it's short-sighted to get together. And I know we're a small body and we do a great job trying to go ahead and make sure that we're socially distanced and wearing masks, but I don't feel that we are losing anything by having Zoom meetings right now as opposed to in-person meetings.
I think, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do if we don't have in-person meetings. We'll have to think of some other alternative, because I will not spend every waking day running around talking to every town council.
The issue associated with that is trying to coordinate information in an executive session doesn't work. That's the only challenge there. Mark?
I mean, I tend to agree with Norm. I'd prefer to avoid any additional contact. I think especially if, 4 of us come down with the disease, then you have no ability for the town government to function at all. So that's something that should be a consideration too, that you don't want to leave the government paralyzed, unable to do, pay its bills and things like that. So I think we have to consider that. And I think we can work out a different schedule for Dawn needs on why we need 3 executive sessions. We've never done that in the past years, and it seems a little crazy to me in the conditions we have now.
We could also, Don, to your point, maybe we could talk about a hybrid. If if they have no preference one way or another, as long as some want to be in the building and some want to work off via Zoom. If we're doing that, you guys can Zoom in from the town office and have that contact if you so choose. But I think that all councils should be given the option to participate in the Zoom format. And if someone to gather in the chambers, if there's 3 or so, or how many ever feel comfortable, then they should be able to do that. But I'll leave that up to the chair to decide if that's even an option to consider at this point.
I don't know that we can do that, hybrid, once the way that we're doing the town hall streams.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think the council approves that. I know it's our new player here, thing number 1 being Brett up in the left-hand corner, actually coordinates all that to make sure that we're still passing the straight base test for legit.
Okay.
Jeff?
I'm good either way.
Cassie?
I'm good either way. I mean, this is a little easier than going in. But how is Lewiston doing it? Are they not having executive sessions?
I'd have to get back to you on the specifics. I can ask the question. I'm not involved with their executive sessions, so I know there's communications through administration and the clerks, but I can tell you it's a lot more complicated than what we currently have here just to host a virtual meeting. Let's leave it at that.
And Cassie, I just want to weigh in on that too. And the reason for the executive session coming up is my evaluation. I do not want that done over Zoom for any reason. Even if I'm not present, I don't want anything to do with my evaluation done via Zoom.
Yeah,
There's the issue.
Yeah.
I'm definitely one of these people that either way, but on the other hand, I want to be safe, and I want to make sure that to me, it needs to be a complete council that's 100% on board, because I respect everybody's, their needs and wants. So, I mean, to me, unless we're a group of 7 that say absolutely, I think we ought to, lean towards the safer side and make everybody comfortable. With that being said, Dawn, what your task is given is definitely a difficult task. I mean, that's no one ever looks forward to that. It's definitely a lot of work. But I guess at that point, I don't want you running around doing what you're doing just because to meet the need. But I guess the question would be to the council is, we're certainly trying to meet a certain requirement for date-wise, right? I mean, is that the concern at this point in time? I mean, we're kind of in some unusual circumstances. So, I mean, is it undue to the council to think that we could actually expand this to be a little bit longer process? I know it's contractual, but
Let me just say something real quick, and maybe there's a way out, at least for now. We do have an in-person executive session scheduled for next week. Why don't we meet in that brief executive session and hash the rest of it out? I'll show you what I need to do, and we need to figure out how to do it. I'm not opposed to being safe, don't get me wrong. I'm older than all of you. So, as long as if I get a shot tomorrow, you're all done. I'm not having another Zoom meeting.
the question is in the past, going back to Mark's point, I mean, typically in the past, not saying we've done it right, but usually the, maybe one, max two executive sessions we've ever had in the process of the evaluation. So, I mean, it's one of those things. So if we can limit it and actually maybe, hammer out some stuff on next meeting, I mean, that would be maybe.
If we hash it out, how we're gonna do it next Tuesday, that would be great with me.
I just want to make sure that you're not feeling that we're slighting you by you being, having this responsibility by us not allowing you to fulfill it. That's all.
Okay.
If you do decide to continue with the virtual meetings, I just need to stress the point that we have a lot of documents that need signed after the meetings, and they require 4 signatures. So just keep that in mind so that you can get in here and sign those. It's a lot easier when you're here in person and we can get it done that night, but when you do virtual meetings, that's not an option any longer. And some of the things are time sensitive.
Can we do Zoom meetings from in the town hall like you do, Diane?
Yeah, you sure can.
Then we're socially distanced. And if need be, we can walk back and forth between places. So there's an option anyway.
All right, so basically put your thinking cap on. We have the in-person meeting next week. John will be looking for feedback to be able to accomplish what we need to be able to work within the time constraints that he needs to fulfill his obligation, or we need to come up with an agreement to address that. Again, I knew that it was right after the first meeting in December. First person I called was Dawn, and we're right back here again, sir. So let's try to address it. I appreciate everybody's time on that, and Dawn's quite specifically because he's got the heavy lifting associated with trying to tie all this together. All right. Back to the tasks. What I'm hearing. Virtual for February seems to be the consensus, and we'll have more weighing in after the executive session on the task that Dawn needs to do. Is that fair? Okay. Next item.
Order 2021-16 electrical vehicle charging stations.
Do you really want me to present that whole thing? You guys.
Projects, Eric, yes.
Did anybody read the memo on the EVs? I know Mark did.
I read it.
I really want to know how his Chatham charger.
You've gone over this a few times. Why don't you just give us your ask? That's all.
Well, it's right there. Authorize the town manager authorize the town manager to approve EV charging stations project in the amount of $19,641 to be funded through the CIP reserve, and authorize the town manager to sign the site license agreement and the electric vehicle charger site host agreement.
Basically, so there's a portion this year, there's a portion later on, right? It's broken up into different segments.
You're talking about fiscal year. The way Diane has it worded, the way she suggested it, there's enough money to pay for it whenever. The contract calls for 1/3 on contract signing, 1/3 on equipment delivery, and 1/3 when it's installed. And my thought was to have the contract signing this fiscal year and the 2/3 of it in next fiscal year when it comes. But if we decide to go with the whole thing this way, then they might be able to start sooner. I don't know.
I guess the next question, I know where you stand, Don, is Brett, is this the direction the economic developer person would go to in this town? I mean, do you see this actually bringing down good things? I think it's a good opportunity, but I mean, you see it from an outside view because you're not a taxpayer in town, but you see what's happening here in town.
Well, I would share something I read over the weekend, which is that they expect price parity with an electronic SUV, light SUV, by 2024. That vehicle will be the same price as a gas-powered vehicle. And to me, that price parity suggests that a lot of folks will start to opt in the way of electric vehicles, just because there's longer or shorter, less life cycle costs. It's cheaper to own an electrical vehicle over the course of the life of the vehicle. So if you can get one for the same price, I think we're going to see some dramatic shifts in the direction of electrical vehicles. So I don't think that that's in doubt. The big question for me was really around the finances and how to pay for it in this time frame. And I think we've got an answer to that with the projected solar savings from the energy credit deal that will be on the agenda next council meeting on February 2nd to seek approval for that, and expect to save 75 grand a year conservatively over 20 years. So there is an opportunity there to pay for it. I see value. It's a tough time, so I really respect all the work that Don has done, but it's a tough call. What allows me, I think, to voice support for it is the fact that we found some money to pay for it. So I think it will bring benefits. I think it will encourage people to visit and to pull over and spend time in the village area while they're visiting and patronize businesses down there. So I think that there will be economic development benefits, as well as good benefits for Lisbon's reputation as a forward-thinking community.
Mr. Chair?
I gotta tell you that the one thing I ask is we moved the dumpsters that are in the picture where we're gonna put the charging stations, okay?
Yes. We're aware of that.
How many charging stations will we have?
4. We'll have
Okay, so
2 pedestals with 4 chargers
in that same location?
and 4 parking spots, yes.
Okay, so what happens when we have Moxie Festival?
We get lots of electric vehicles in town and they have a place to park.
But they can't park there because we use that, it's all blocked off.
Some of it's not, well, maybe it won't be. We're not even sure we're having Moxie this year, but still, I know what you're saying.
I'm just saying for future use, I mean, this is something that's gonna be a permanent structure, so I would think that we would want to make sure that, I mean, that would be one of the events I would expect if somebody were gonna use it, they would use it then.
Right. The reason that spot was chosen was because we own it to begin with. And secondly, because it got us higher points grade-wise than putting it somewhere else and made us competitive for the grant. That's the reason we chose those 4 spots. And you had to have 4 spots. We don't have to use them all, and I think the way we're signing it is 2 for electric vehicle and 2 or for whatever. You can use it if you don't have to be electric vehicle users. I know what you're saying, though, in that when we have the Moxie Festival, we want to make sure we have adequate parking. I'm certainly hoping that at least this year, the Wombo site provides us plenty of parking, and we'll see what happens.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So I definitely respect all the work that you've put in, the time, and the effort, and energy, Dawn. Definitely appreciate everything you've done there. However, I can't in good conscience vote for this. I just don't feel that at this point in time, and hearing what Brett talked about with parity of an SUV sometime in 2024, I mean, we're in 2021, and I'm living in the here and now, and I don't usually look short-sighted. But with the current budget challenge we had last year because of COVID and the continuing budget challenges we're going to have this year and for the foreseeable future, that money, it's hard for me to say that there's a sense of urgency around this, that I feel it makes me want to vote to spend $20K of savings from another potential savings area in the solar. That could be, those savings could be allocated elsewhere on a project that may need it, and we haven't even really fleshed it out. We're not even in budget season yet. So that's my take. I'm not trying to influence anybody any other way. I'm just trying to tell you, I read everything, and I can see the benefit down the line of why it would be appealing and make our community look that much more forward thinking. But I just don't think the timing is great on this, so I'm not going to support.
I have to agree with Norm.
The only reason I say the timing is because this is grant money. We're getting, if we decide to do anything with electrical vehicles, charge stations in the future, it's not $20,000, it's double that. So that's why now. And we're not using, we're using money we already have.
True, but I think from where I'm standing, it could be money that we need in an area that is a greater need than charging stations. We don't. How many electric vehicles do we even have? I mean, we don't have any data to support any reason why we would want to have. This is.
I sent a whole packet full of data for you.
What I'm trying to say is that there's no data that would support an increase in our area, in this area, that we're going to grow exponentially enough to say that the investment would pay off. That's the way I looked at it when I filtered through the data that I saw, and so it's okay that we see things differently on this. That's okay. I'm just okay.
So Don, contract signing has to happen when?
It would happen after we pass it, if we pass it.
Right. When, obviously it's tied to a grant. When are they expecting us to sign, is my question.
We already delayed it quite a bit. They're expecting us to do something with it shortly.
And it's a third due at signing and the balance when implemented, is that the other piece that they?
The balance is due, the third is due when the equipment arrives, and a third is due when it's installed. And that, again, my thinking was next fiscal year, so we will be talking $7,000 this year.
Okay, then that was the listening dot, so 7,000 now, 7,000 upon delivery, the balance, 6,000 upon completion is what I understand. Okay. Any other questions of Dawn or Brett on the topic that I haven't heard? I'll entertain a motion if somebody wants to make it.
Make a motion to approve.
I need a second for the motion. I got a first and I got a second. Hearing no other questions, roll call.
Councilor Albert?
No.
Councilor Lairchelle?
Yes.
Councilor Ward?
Yes.
Councilor Lund?
Yes.
Councilor Ganong?
No.
Councilor Colby?
No.
Councilor Fellows?
Yes.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 yeas, 3 nays. Order passed.
Next item.
Order 2021-17 Special Event Coordinator.
Who wants to frame it?
Yep, Brett, you want to start with that?
Sure, happy to. Mark and I have been, working together for a year or so now and have a relationship, and thinking forward to the summer ahead of us and the COVID cloud and the uncertainty that we're working to manage through, and thinking about how to keep our options open for the coming summer. Moxie Festival may or may not happen. I know Mark's going to be planning hard to make that happen. And at the same time, I think, COVID has created a lot of challenges, but it's created opportunities as well. And folks, I think one of the big takeaways from last summer is that folks like to gather, and in order to do so safely, it has to happen outside. So summer, looking forward, has an opportunity here to put some resources in place and have an event series. If Moxie Festival isn't if we're not able to host a Moxie Festival, by planning now to have a series of events, we'll have something to work through, and something to react with. If Moxie Festival happens, this is one more opportunity to build on that and attract people into Lisbon. So we're looking at a summer event series that would happen over the course of probably late June through Labor Day. It could allow us to create some energy and attract people to Grazi Square on Village Street. There's an opportunity there to have, food truck rally with a pop-up farmers market. We could use the Warumbo site for a series of events that already great ideas are taking shape. A classic car cruise with food trucks down there. And we can look at Main Street as well as an option to build off some of the lessons we learned last year with the closure. And do some things differently down there. So we've got some great areas. Folks are going to want to gather outside. In order to execute, we need some resources. We need somebody to really take the reins and connect the dots and work with vendors, coordinate with local businesses to make sure that they have a schedule and that they're able to promote, to put some advertising in the paper with the budget that we have in my department's budget. And then also to leverage some resources from the Maine Community Foundation Entrepreneurship Grant to pull some additional resources in for equipment and other things that will make Lisbon really shine in the region and attract people. So what we're doing right now, time is of the essence, and we need to really have a plan in place that we can promote about 3 months from now, mid-April. Seems like a natural time frame to really start pushing out. And that means we need to have the calendar in place. We need to have vendors lined up. We need to have events designed. And so time is of the essence. And what we're asking now is for some feedback from the council to allow us to move that planning process forward. We've got a meeting on Thursday on Zoom with the local business community, and we'd like to start sharing some of these ideas and some of these options to get feedback. In order to do that with a straight face and to be able to follow through on what we're talking about with them, it would be really helpful tonight to get a general sense from the council that there is some support to hire a coordinator. Using Moxie coordinator resources from last year carried forward, plus the allocation for this year. And we also think that there's going to be a lot of efficiencies with the summer event series in between Moxie. It's going to be the same skill set. The outreach will be to very similar, vendors and partners. And so somebody who's working to coordinate Moxie could very efficiently add a few more opportunities there. So if we're reaching out to somebody about Moxie, you could also say, by the way, we're going to have a pop-up market on July 15th on Main Street. Would you like to participate in that as well? So in order to get there, in order to stay on track with the calendar, in order to have plenty of time to really put the pieces in place, coordinate with the local business community so they can take advantage of this, it would be very helpful to get a general, take your temperature on support for opening up the job description for the Moxie coordinator to include some flexibility to support a summer event series.
Is there a job? Go ahead.
I was going to say, thank you. Appreciate that, Don. This is and just to be clear and for transparency, this additional title ad of events coordinator doesn't change any sort of the bottom line. There's no additional cost associated with it. All we're doing is just changing the job description to include that event coordinator title. Is that correct?
I think so. I think there's a couple of scenarios, right? You got Moxie plus an event series, Moxie no event series, or you've got event series no Moxie. And thinking about it, I think $15,000 was the budget in the past. I think if you had the best case scenario, which was Moxie plus an event series, I think you could, with efficiencies gained, it might be an additional $5 or so to do it right. But there is carry forward from last year's budget in addition to this. So that 15 plus a potential best case scenario 5 on top of that, you're still well within the available budget.
Hearing that out, I think that, you know, it's early, so I don't want to hamstring anything. But just hearing that, I would say that if we were sticking at the 15 for the time being, for the foreseeable future, with the understanding that once we return to a life post-COVID, then I think then we talk about, because we'll have a few events under our belt too. I feel like that maybe that would be something, you know, a worthy place timing-wise too, to have that discussion. And if you feel that that's going to be something that would hamstring hiring potential candidates with decent qualifications, then we could always, I guess you could bring that back to us as well.
Sure, that makes sense.
Chad, may I?
Yep.
Again, it's one of those things where listening to some of the evening events with some of the people in town, it does seem like there's a lot of energy on the idea of business owners and younger business owners too, which is kind of nice seeing some younger people step forward that actually want to really add to the town and actually bring on some events, which is kind of exciting because we haven't seen that in a while, to be honest with you. It's the same old dogs trying to do the same tricks, and it's getting tough. A couple things that I just want to share with the council is I've been and Brett's head's going to get really big, but since Brett's come on, he's actually taken over a lot of duties and done a lot of things that we've been asking him to do. And the downfall is with our employees, we're really good at spreading them wide and thin. And I think this gives an opportunity to Brett to actually fulfill some of the things he wants to do without actually being 100% there all the time. And anything we can do to try to, the economic department is really our future in the community. You know, it's one of those things where it's funny because it seems so some communities want to cut the economic budget when during hard times. And that's when you really ought to be, you know, really kind of, you know, getting it up and going so you can actually come out stronger at the other end. And last year I knew that the Moxie Plaza actually was dear to Brett. I know he took a lot of his energy to make that work, along with Mark and a lot of other people. There was a lot of coordination, there's a lot of time. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other duties that Mark needs to do and Brett. I mean, we got to be open for new business people coming in and doing that inventory of businesses in town. And we've earmarked a lot of things for Brett to do over the next year. So if this actually allows these functions to happen without Brett, I hate to use the word babysitting, but the idea of actually being there all the time to make sure it happens. So, and Mark too, I think that's huge because these people are doing a lot with little. So any resources, especially if we're tapping in, you know, my biggest questions, I reached out to Diane today and I actually reached out to Don earlier to get some questions. Is, you know, I just hate hiring people without a really defined job description. We just want to know when we get down to this year that, you know, these were the goals and this is how it was meant and this is how the time was used. So coming in next year, to Noam's point, if this actually does just take wind and really happen, we can justify the idea of saying, look, this is what we got done and met our criteria, but with a little bit more, we could have went a long ways. I mean, we could actually try to move things forward. So I'm all in for it as long as we actually have a way of actually, my concern a little bit was, and I mentioned it to Diane today, was the idea of just, it kind of sounds like a joint venture between the rec and economic, which I think it's great, but I just don't want to get hung up with the idea of, one person or the other person feeling that it's more obligated to be someone that's actually under them. I mean, and it sounds like it's really, I guess, Mark, from what I hear, it's basically going to stem from the recreational department, right? It's actually going to be more managed under you in a sense. Is that true or?
No, not necessarily. The way I see it is that the last time we did the Moxie Fest in 2019, the coordinator used about 9,000 of that 15,000 was allocated. So simply put, and Brett said it perfectly in the long version, but the way I like to present it is that what we're doing is adding a little bit of responsibility to the Moxie coordinator's position. It's going to be a special person. You hit the nail on the head. It's going to be a unique person that's going to be able to do this from June all the way through Labor Day. But that's all we're asking them to do is do the events that correlate with the business community. And, that's where Brett's going to be setting things up. But when the rubber hits the road and events are being put on, you had mentioned Monday night cruise nights over at the Rumbo site. Easy to do. You don't have to have anybody there. But if somebody needs to be called, it can be somebody from the Parks and Rec Department and not Brett over in Westbrook. So I think it's going to be a very good marriage. I think it's smart. I think it's using that position more efficiently. Instead of hiring someone to do a seasonal position for 3 days, you're asking someone to do weekend work, some evening work, working with farmers market, local business people, like you said, Vern, and a lot of motivated people out there right now, a lot of energy. And the time right now is to foster that, to fuel it.
I'm for it, so I mean, I'll leave it as that. I'll let anybody else have any questions that they have. But.
Brett, would you like, I have a question, Mr. Chair. Brett, is this a good point to expand a little bit on where the entrepreneurship pilot might fit in? I know you have more to come later on that. But.
Yeah, I think it's just a really nice tie-in, and there was a report done. If you haven't seen it yet, outside analysts came in and looked at Lisbon. There was a lot of good feedback from Lisbon businesses to these analysts to populate this report, and it became clear in the findings of that report that there's a real need for this type of activity. There's a real need to create opportunities for business folks to come together and share ideas and get excited together. And there's a real need to create public amenities that bring people into Lisbon. And so this event series is really a baby step to execute that based on the reality that we're in and the opportunity that's been presented to us. So I think it ties in very well. And we're looking at allocating of the 50,000 implementation dollars that are coming our way. We still have 7,500 from the original 10 planning grant. So we've got a budget of 57,500, looking at allocating 10 of that to this. So, not breaking the bank. We're going to be efficient. We're going to really stretch the resources and be creative about that and pull in businesses that have ideas and products that they want to get out there, and create a platform for them. So it's a real nice tie-in.
Mark, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I see us as actually only the second year going into trying to do the change from the Moxie Festival as it was to more community-based. And I vehemently believe that we had a win in 2019. I remember the first conversations with you and Julianne and the crew associated with that is that the assurance that the town was going to get you the resources to be able to have that be a success. Are we running counter to that now by trying to expand it, or is it because we're also trying to make the festival still be sustainable by itself? And we're now adding another dimension to it that wasn't planned and trying to earmark the funds for it. It was a weird conversation back in the day to be able to say, okay, we're earmarking this 15,000 for this position to be able to do some of the things that haven't ever really been connected because it was a whittled down to an environment that was in a lot of ways done internally through Brett's predecessor by taking on this additional staff. Are we now shooting ourselves in the foot by trying to add something else to it only in year two?
That's a very good question, but I don't see it as being a huge problem because, like I said, we spent 9,000 of that 15,000, and if Brett's numbers are right, it's going to be probably another $5,000 to $7,000, which will still be right within that budget line to keep it under what we planned for. But and I said earlier, it's going to take a unique person, and what I truly believe, and I know not everybody agrees with me on this, but I think this special person has to come from the business community. And I only say that because they have to have a connection with, and that's the whole point of the Moxie Festival, is to really get the business community and the rest of the school department, everybody that's involved, kind of connected together. But I think with my overall plan to move the Moxie Festival into the business community, this is a perfect segue for that. And if you find the right person that kind of makes it a collateral responsibility for themselves, not necessarily a Main Street business person, but somebody from the business community, could be somebody from Lisbon, somebody from Lisbon Falls, that wants to spearhead this, that has the passion, that has the drive. There's already a Moxie committee set up. There's an incredible amount of business energy of the people that want to get involved. I just think it's a great way to connect all the dots.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So I think that in hearing that, and Mark, I certainly understand the passion and definitely the renewed interest from the business community was one of the wins that I take away from 2019's festival for sure. But I'm a little reluctant and I'm skeptical to think that the appropriate person to chair the committee would be somebody from the business community. I think that could lead to backlash in ways that we probably wouldn't anticipate. I think it's important that we have the presence that comes from the town hall, if you will, whether it's from the rec department. I know that the idea was to take it out of the ED's office, economic director's office, to get it to where it belongs, so that the job of doing the town's economic development would be the focal point and not the Moxie Festival. And I think that was mission accomplished for sure. But and I think that you and Julie and the entire committee did a great job of getting the business community back involved and everybody taking ownership of pieces. And I think that was critical. But I still think there has to be a component that is managed by the town in an indirect fashion. And that goes back to that idea that having the department head for the recreation department sort of be the reporting, the touchstone for the person who's the coordinator of all events. I like the idea of taking it out of just the Moxie realm and making it all events for the community. I think that's a great idea. But I think that the way I would like to see it anyway was having the transition to all the business folks that we talked about, but there'll always be the leadership component of it remaining in the town for final sort of disposition on big decisions. I think that would be, it worked well this last time around. And I think that's a way it can continue to work, where we're more an advisory role and not doing the heavy lifting like they've done in the past. My 2 cents for what they're worth. Thank you.
So could I just ask just a little bit of clarification of that, Norm? So you're saying that for now, keep up with the rec department? What about in the future? What about 5 years from now? Do you ever see it moving into the business community, having the business community take over the Moxie Festival?
Sure. No, I think I can support the vision of where you're going with the end game, but I think that always will have to land with, so short term, to speak to what you had said, I wouldn't, at this moment in time right now, where we've just kind of transitioned, if we would have had 2 years, last year being another successful festival, and this year, going into our third festival and seeing nothing but growth and all good things, then I would probably say, Mark, maybe I can get on board with and see that. But right now, I still think we've only had one kind of good one under our belt. We didn't have one last year. If we have one this year, I'm hopeful that it's going to be a pretty good one, but I don't think it'll be of the same scale for obvious reasons. So do I see the progress getting to where I think you want to go? Sure. But I think I always want to see that it's never a handoff of completely saying from now on, this is a business owner, this is all business community handles Moxie Festival. I think that we want to kind of play a role in that in some way. Who knows? If the business community comes to us and says, you know what, we're going to pay for the coordinator, we got this, we're definitely going to need involvement with the town, so we'll need whichever department, whoever they decide at that time would be the liaison or the connection to the town. Sure. Could I see getting to what you were thinking? Yeah, I think that would be great. But I don't know if now this year is the right time.
Yeah, I'm not thinking this year. I'm not thinking this year or maybe even next year, but I think, down the road, this year was definitely a hitch. We didn't have it, but I still think that, in the future, I think that that's something that the business community can wrap their hands around and do it very well, like a lot of other communities do. A lot of
sure
do. So,
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Gordon. I just wanted to say that by way of example, and I know it's a much bigger community, is the Clam Festival in Yarmouth. is run by their Chamber of Commerce. And that's the kind of visual to a business. Yes, we're a smaller town, but I think when you get developed to the point where you can get business involved in it, and certain businesses are sponsoring it and all of that, it becomes a much more continually viable thing. So I think we could grow into that. We may not be there this year. We don't even know if we're going to be able to hold Moxie this year. So
I think for historical reasons, we should know that it did used to be run by the Chamber of Commerce here in Lisbon until they merged Lewiston, Auburn, and then that bigger Chamber of Commerce said, well, we don't care about Lisbon enough to do it. That's when we lost town had to step in. It would be nice if we could go back to that. I certainly would see that as a long-term goal. It's just we have to find the feasibility.
Well, if we keep growing,
well, that Yarmouth actually spends in excess of $40,000 annually to be able to hire that coordinator through their Chamber of Commerce. So this was us tiptoeing into that to be able to say, okay, all the police, public works, and our economic development director's former time associated with this is, okay, let's move this to some recreation. The Parks and Recreation has got a much better community vibe, which I feel in the council at the time felt was lacking in the way that the festival was presented in the past. Moving towards closer, the community-based part of it definitely worked that first year because by just the nature of who Julianne and Mark are as people, what had been whittled down to 6 or 8 people represented by Cassie, who's been sitting on the committee the longest, grew to, we had 40 people sitting there actively through these meetings. So I don't want to slow the roll there. Can it tackle this? Probably in that regard, but I just didn't know if it was running counter to the fact is what's the mission here? If the mission was always Moxie, or is it summer event programming, which has this other vibe to it? Is it one and the same? And I'm not sure.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I think Brett mentioned it, but I'm not sure if he emphasized it, that we're looking at just a 1 year at a time. And that, that's something that, we can't change for next year.
Hey, just a question. Where does PCL stand on that? Have we even thought about reaching out to them to see if they'd want to take it on?
PCL actually.
I can actually express from my opinion if you want me to, Mr. Chair.
Please do.
As being, part of PCL for a long time, it's a big undertaking. There's no question about it. As much as there is a lot of renewed business, how would I say it, energy in town. I think Mark sees it and Brett sees it. The hardest thing is the worst thing you can do is burn those people out really quickly. You want to make sure that they actually see the benefit of doing what they do. As positive change, we're actually been trying to change our business structure this last year. From how we collect fees and how we do it. I mean, our long-term goal, if we're going to stay sustainable in Lisbon, is the idea of actually merge to the place where we actually have at least a part-time director to actually continue on what we're doing, only because it's really hard. As all of us, we all get stressed out. We all take on way too many responsibilities, and then it starts lacking on one end. So it's really hard for volunteers to maintain everything, So as of this point, to actually bring it on to positive change, it's actually been a discussion for a long time. It just won't happen at this point in time. We actually started out as the group that was, 30 or 40 businesses strong, with 50 people showing up at functions, and now we've actually dwindled down to the point of the diehard 10 or 12 businesses that kind of seem to function and sponsor most events. Long-term wise, it's going to come down to the idea of us actually getting more, or being like a chamber where we actually have a paid administrator, or at least a part-time administrator, to keep the programs going. It's hard. I mean, as I said before, kind of call myself an old dog. I'm not that old, but most of the people in business, people that serve pretty much in most of the meetings, have been doing this for a long time, and actually would like to either see new blood or actually continue it. But it's hard for people to commit. Very much like Mark and Brett are talking about. It's really, you can you couldn't have a volunteer come in and actually do and coordinate the things that they want to do, only because it takes a lot of time and energy. You know, you really got to actually have someone that has a commitment, and not just time, but actually, you know, have them get reimbursed for what they're doing, so they feel, you know, that it's an obligation to keep moving it forward. So until positive change gets to that point where we actually have a part-time or full-time coordinator to actually try to move function forward, I don't see us expanding any events that we have right now. It's just you can't go beyond your means, and we're pretty much at our means. And I think that's where Mark and Brett are pretty much saying the same thing. They're both pretty much to that outside of what their opportunities are, and to expand it, needed to bring somebody on and actually have another person obligated to actually do these things and feel committed and be part of the community. So I do understand where they're coming from, because it's as much as everybody in our community likes volunteering and likes committing to being on committees, we're starting to see less and less of that all the time. Everybody has a hard time committing, you know, next week, next month, 6 months from now, because they just don't know where their personal setting is going to be, you know, professionally and you know, just public, you know, just personally. So long-term commitment stuff is tough from business owners and volunteers. So for the short on your question, Norm, I don't see people like Positive Change actually taking on an event like that, because I think we would want to take it on and have it fail. We would actually have to be in the right position to make that happen. And that position would be very much like Mark and Brett's talking about right now, actually having a paid coordinator to actually make sure it comes off, and not actually not relying on 2 or 3 volunteers that could easily just not make it happen. So you're better off over planning and making a great event than you are trying to wing it and just not have it happen. And I think that's where Mark and Brett are both coming from. We can actually have these events happen and not actually have either one of them being 100% committed to be there all the time, which they can't be. So again, I'm not sure that answers the question, I know, but I mean, at this point, I don't see an outside group taking over the festival without some type of paid coordinator to make it happen.
Well, so to that point, in talking with Mark and the vision of the eventually making Moxie a private sector sort of run event, and to your point about PCL needing to investigate and having a part-time paid coordinator, I think there could be a match here. I mean, the idea is that if we're looking at this honestly and saying, what are we trying to establish? Trying to establish a paid coordinator position that covers on multiple events, but you know, ultimately something that could move outside of the scope of the town having to pay for it. So what better way to, I mean, we could seed this up front to get it going with PCL with the understanding that eventually it becomes self-sustaining, and it becomes that they're paying for that coordinator position once the revenue starts to kind of roll in. That's something they would handle, but it would establish that link. Am I making sense here, Mark? Is that kind of lining up with what you were thinking?
I was thinking, well, it's very clear 2 years ago when you guys gave me this blessing that my mission was going to be to make it, you know, first of all, my first goal was to have more businesses included in that. I think we doubled or tripled the amount of businesses involved in 2019. And get them not just involved with, you know, $5, $10 support, but getting involved by volunteering and getting their businesses and their staff members to volunteer. That would build an incredible unity with the business community, and eventually they would want to take it over. It would just merge into the business community running it. And that's why I feel it should be, and that's where it was.
Whether it's PCL or whether it's Chamber of Commerce, or maybe I don't know how that gets to, you know, what that looks like. So I know
it comes down to having the right person, you know, having the right person or the right group of people. You remember Chip Morrison? Chip Morrison was running the Chamber of Commerce for a long time. And he was the right guy because he brought everybody together. He was ultra positive. And he probably won't come out of retirement to do it, but.
I think what's going to happen in the long term is there's always going to need to be the business community and a lot of other parts of the private sector, being the nonprofits. I mean, you need all those people to come together, and it's always going to be a town glue to make that happen, to bring it together. So I always see the town having a financial interest in it, and not so much the idea of spearheading every event. but actually having that administrating or the directing role to actually keep, as Norm said initially, try to keep, all to make sure everybody's on point and make sure that reflects the town the way it should. The idea that you're talking about, something that Positive Change has talked about many times. I mean, do we, if we get the right person in play, could we actually take over the event? There's a lot of legalities when it comes to insurances and stuff like that. Diane knows more about than anybody else. That even a small event would be tough to do. I mean, even Positive Change to actually do our concerts in the park. I mean, that's several $1,000s worth of insurance a year just for that small venue. You know what I mean? For a mass gathering permit and insurance. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that would have to be pulled together. I like the way you're thinking, Norm, because I think long term that's kind of how this works. If we can, we always got to have. We can't rely on just a couple people to make this happen. And then that's one of the things where we right now we put it all on Mark's shoulder. But if Mark decides to retire someday, which I'm sure he never will, but how does that get passed along? Brett's doing, so we got to have a long-term plan, and I think what we're doing is kind of merging into that, and we'll see how it plays out.
Fair enough.
All right, the motion was, the discussion was framed in the form of a motion, or discussion, I mean.
I'll make a motion that we move forward with this and let them figure it out with Diane on how this lays out. I just would like to think that we actually have a definite job description laid out with roles, responsibility, goals, who actually reviews this. I mean, I realize it's going to be between the two of you, whether it's Diane's job to actually review and make sure that this all goes through. Just going back to what Alan's been trying to do with all the positions and the rest of the council, making sure that it's all accountable and the person actually has a defined role and purpose, so they actually know if they're succeeding and their expectations are well known out front. It's kind of anytime you hire someone for a kind of a new unknown position, it's hard to have those things. But I think as a council, that's one thing we've been striving for the last few years is make sure that every person that comes on is accountable for what they do and make sure that their role. And that's, to me, that's my biggest concern is making sure we actually have it laid out before we hire them. Definitely a need. The funding, I think, is not a question. It's just more the idea of make sure we do it right so don't fail.
You've been working on a job description, haven't you?
Yes, we have.
One other question I have is, and this is strange, and this I'll leave this up to you folks, but with that new rule coming out as far as for like the 3-month employee, the required week's vacation. What do we actually consider this being? Is this a seasonal part-time or is this
It's seasonal, it doesn't count. It's not part of that new law. That's why we're going to keep this seasonal.
And I didn't know if we were going to do this as kind of a subcontract type of project.
It's got to be an employee relationship.
That's what I would like to see is a contract type of thing rather than an employee, because I think we're going to get more bang for our buck with it, if it's possible to do.
I'll leave that to you folks. That's definitely way out of our range. So
I need a second to Fern's motion.
Second.
Any other discussion on the item? Call the roll, please.
Councilor Albert?
Yes.
Councilor Larishow?
Yes.
Councilor Ward?
Yes.
Councilor Lunt?
Yes.
Councilor Ganong? Councilor Colby? And Councilor Fellows?
Yes.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. Order passed.
5.
You got to assess it.
They need to unmute so they can say their
Oh, I didn't hear that.
vote. We didn't hear it.
One more time.
It was a yes for me.
Kathy?
Yes.
Okay.
7.
7-0, order passed. Thank you.
Next item.
Order 2021-18 Capital Improvement Program Policy.
We made some revisions to the current capital, well, actually, I should say to the current, because Twyler and I could not find anywhere in the record that the current capital improvement policy was ever adopted by council. But we brought this in front of the Finance Committee, and they made some recommendations for some changes. So that's what we're presenting to you tonight. So the first change is we identified the month or beginning in December is when we're going to be working on the capital improvement policy. The other policy had it was updated annually, but it didn't say what month that we started the process. So we added that information in. We also had a discussion on the way the CIP has been formed, and we've always had it go out like 10 years, but by the recommendation of the Finance Committee, they'd like to see a 5-year CIP. And then right next to it, another 5 years, because it's easier to look at 5 years at a time. So we added that change. And then we also added the format of the capital improvement plan, which talks about the plan is provided for the town, water, and school. And they all provide and submit a capital improvement plan to the council and to the planning board. So we added that language. And then we also added that it includes assets that would hold a useful life of 5 years or longer, and includes machinery, equipment, or vehicles that are $10,000 or more. So we used to have 5,000, but we all agreed that that was too low of a threshold, so we've increased that to 10,000. So it's an update to a policy that was never actually adopted.
So Diane, the only question I have is what's the capitalization threshold? Is that 5,000?
No, actually, I think it's 10,000. We're changing that to 10.
Okay.
Chair, make a motion for discussion.
I need a second for that.
Second.
Okay. Go for
I
it.
think it's, and this was supported by the Finance Committee.
Yes, it was. Yep.
It was, which I think is great. The only question I have about the $10,000 thing, Diane, is the discussion we had about the other day about the updating of the personal computers and stuff like that. Does that still fall in place, or they look at that as a larger number because there's more than one that would actually come in and be replaced?
Right, because they're all single computers. The only time they would look at that is like the server, because the server would be over 10,000, but your PCs, they're individual.
Still, wouldn't that be on your capital plan though, as far as your replacement of them, or is that not, that fall out of your capital
Well, I
plan?
would have to replace a lot of them in order to get up to that threshold, because any one computer does not meet that threshold. They're only, right now, they're probably about $1,000 a piece.
Where does that fall in now, as far as, because I mean, throughout the town, we actually have quite a few different laptops. Does that just fall in your yearly IT budget then?
Yes, it does. Yeah. The only thing that would go on the capital would be the larger upgrades, like the servers.
I just would want to make sure that the smaller items that don't seem very expensive, that actually do come in, still fall within the budget. And again, if they fall within the IT budget yearly, I mean, that's fine. Just, I know it was a discussion we had the other day after you were trying to get some.
That's all budgeted for annually, and we try to, budget to upgrade X amount of computers every single year. And I'm working on that list right now with Roundtable.
So to follow up on Fern's point, do we have an inventory of computers, like how old they are and what ones
Yes,
need to
we
be?
do.
Okay, good.
But Roundtable has not done a very good job keeping that up to date for me, and I'm having an issue with them on that right now. I'm trying to get that complete list, and I noticed last week that it's not up to date. And as of my phone call with her, she told me in order to get that up to date, that they would have to treat that as a project and charge us another $4,500 for something that they should have been doing all along. So I told her, no, I'm not paying $4,500. And then she wanted to have me assign a person from each department to help go through that process. And I said, no, I said, we're paying you $45,000 a year. When we upgrade a computer, you need to upgrade your list with the serial numbers and everything. And they're not doing that. So.
Mr. Chair?
I've got another conversation tomorrow. She's going to be calling me at 1 o'clock, and I don't know where it's going to go from there, but it's not an up-to-date list.
Mr. Albert.
Thank you. To Diane's point here, and this is a drum I've been banging for a while, and I'm gonna pound on it hard right now. So as we go into budget season, the only reason that I would say we can't dump Roundtable right now is that I've had previous discussions with Diane. that would cause a hardship in the transition of one of the final modules we're going through with Munis, which is the utilities module. And I don't want to see us push that out. I think it would do more harm than good to dump Roundtable, who has been a partner with Munis, to get that final utilities module in place. But as soon as we get that in place, it is my strong recommendation, opinion, that we consider an in-house asset. I know that having preliminary discussions with the school department, they have a resource there that would welcome a partner. So if we have work here that doesn't look like full-time work on the municipal side, we would certainly be able to supplement a new resource, a new asset, and use their time in the school department. And I'm sure some of the other partner departments could use some IT assistance here and there as well. So I think we need to put that on our radar, and this is a great conversation to have right now because of what's going on. Those are my 2 cents.
Thank you.
You can only imagine between the school, the water department, and the other functions of the town that they don't all have the same IT concerns. So, I mean, I can't imagine working together with all the partners in town that we can't actually fulfill an IT. I mean, it was once upon a time we went out because we felt we were getting better taken care of at a lower price by subletting it. But it just seems like that's actually fallen away, and IT's not going away. I mean, IT is going to be getting more and more, to me, of a concern moving forward. So I'm definitely all ears to the idea of actually listening to what it would take, and what is the time frame for us getting into that finishing that final module? I mean, is that 3 months out, 6 months out, a year out, Diane?
I would say it's at least 8 months out. We're going to start in February, but there's a lot of work that we're going to have to do. I have no idea what they're going to be asking from us. And I don't see it happening probably till October, if everything goes well. I mean, if it's anything like the tax module, that took us about a year.
So yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I would hate to put another obligation on our finance committee, but is this another good task for the finance committee to see if it's viable for us to actually bring this in-house over the next year, working with the school, the municipality, and the water department to see if there's actually enough need there and financial savings to do it. I don't think it's a save money, but in the long run, it may save us a lot of agony. And Alan, do you think that's actually a doable recommendation for them to investigate that, or don't you think that's there?
Well, no, I do. Again, it's no different than the solid waste discussion in that regard, is the fact that it's just a question of when do they get to be able to tackle it. What I like about the finance committee is they are looking at what they can be tasked with, so they set it on their priorities to be able to address them. They have a list right now that was mostly coming from us. I say that because there's only 4 items on there, the first of which is the capital improvement, rolling into the budget, and then into the various topics as they can come up with for the solid waste, knowing that there's no real timeline on that piece because we don't rush the process.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
So in thinking this through and hearing the timeline that Diane established, which I wasn't sure of, now hearing that, there may be some opportunity for us to maybe get, there are plenty of temporary agencies that have IT professionals that will take contract jobs. And so we may be able to get someone we could contract to be the point person for in-house for this utility module with Munis. So taking that off of the plate of our contractor and Roundtable, because to be quite honest, I don't feel like they've been a great partner to begin with. And I know that it was a pain point for Diane to think that there would be no staff available to be the point person if we were to let Roundtable go. We couldn't afford to let Roundtable go because we still have other assets that need to be managed. But I think what we could do is using that, most of these IT temporary folks that we can bring in for 6-8 months, they're looking for long-term assignments. So this might be a way for us to sort of have an audition with somebody who could then turn into our long-term partner. I don't know if that's something that is outside of the normal. We would still have to post the position and go through the exercise, I'm sure, due to the requirements, but it may be worth investigating. Diane, I want your input because I know that you'd be the one that have to reach out to those resources. And have you had any luck doing that in the past?
To an outside IT,
So
no.
like Robert Half Agency
Yeah,
is one that I think
not
of
for
in
IT,
Portland.
I have not, no.
Yeah, there's an agency in Portland called Robert Half Agency, and they do. So there's one example of several different. That they have, assets like that are available, and they'll go from contract job to contract job, trying to find a place where they can say, "This is where I want to go and be." It's just something to kind of put out there.
I'm gonna find out first from Tyler Tech exactly how much more work that Roundtable has to do on this for the implementation, if any.
That system.
Then we can go from there.
Is that data migration for system engineer type stuff?
Say that again?
Is that data, what type of work are they doing? The data transfer?
No, it's not data transfer at all. No, it's whatever they have to do behind the scenes that I don't ever get involved in. They had to do work on the tax module too, and they also had to assist us a little on the financial. And a lot of it too is hardware, making the hardware work with the new software.
To Norm's point, the fact is you can either go with a short term or you've got a very legitimate case.
Yep.
I'll use the example. Our current IT director started as a system engineer that was hired specifically to do the migration. He was hired to be able to implement Tyler. Once the process there, you've got the person on board, you've already got the resource to be able to know if he's going to cut it long term for where he's going to be. If you're looking for this to be able to outsource or eliminate the outsourcing of what Roundtable's doing, you could bring them in at this time.
Okay.
And the fact that if you've got
It's worth looking into. It really is, because
if you can run the numbers and be able to make it a part of the budget, at least it's in the budget for consideration to know what it means. Because the two of you guys, it seems to be the third budget cycle that we're entering, that there's no better solution associated with that, and there's much frustration. Where the hell were we?
So we're on the capital improvement.
All right, this has been blessed by the finance committee. It's dialing in. Some of it was definitions and that type of stuff. I'd make the motion to accept this presented. Need a second for that motion.
Second. I'll second.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Council Albert,
Yes.
Council Larochelle,
Yes.
Council Ward,
Yes.
Council Lund,
Yes.
Council Ganong,
Yes.
Council Colby,
Yes.
Council Fellows,
Yes.
7-0, order passed.
Committee reports, school?
So the most recent committee meeting, there was some hearty discussion about the return back to school with the Friday being off, and but for the most part, it was all good conversation around how things continue to do the best they can with what they got there. So,
Okay. Planning?
They didn't have a meeting. They didn't have any items. However, you all know they have a full plate now.
Right. LDC, sir.
I didn't make it to the meeting the other night, but it sounds like the recap was pretty much what Brett's already mentioned, and Brett can jump in at all he wants. If anything, I may have Brett just put a little advertisement out for his meeting coming up, just in case somebody is watching this, that they would be, once you kind of just give a head up on that, if you could, Brett.
Sure. Appreciate that. It's a great idea, Fern. So we have a meeting largely geared towards the business community, but anybody's welcome. This Thursday, the 21st at 6 p.m. Email me at brichardson@lisbonme.org, and I'll send you the Zoom link. Love to have you there.
looking forward to it.
Thank you, sir. Conservation, nothing to report at this time. Recreation,
Nothing new to report.
county, nothing. Library,
Nothing new.
water, sir.
They met last week and had a commissioner resign, and other than that, there wasn't a lot of noteworthy information that came out of it.
Okay. That's later in the agenda, so we'll move right along if that's the case then. Finance, they meet next week, I believe it is.
Monday.
And town manager.
I just wanted to give you an update on the assessor. As you know, she's going to be retiring. Her retirement date was March 5th, but she has agreed to work through April and maybe even longer because of some of the challenges we have right now in the office. But I also talked to her about the 1 day a week assessor, contracting with an assessor with the full-time assessing clerk. She really feels that that will work here because that's the way we used to do it. Mm-hmm. She really wants it to work and she wants the transition to be seamless. So she's agreed to be that assessor 1 day a week. I think I can get her to do it for a year, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Close to it, maybe, we'll see. But I'm working on, if that's agreeable to everybody, I think it's the best way to see if this is gonna work. And she wants it to be a seamless transition to whatever happens. So she's agreed to do it.
What day? Coffee and donuts every day she shows up.
I know. So, I mean, that was really good that she wanted to do this. And who knows, maybe if it works for her, it may be longer term. I don't know. But I wanted to give you an update on that. So I would have to be I'm getting ready to work on a contract for the services to cover everything. So she'd be a true independent contractor.
Mm-hmm. Tell her thank you for her.
Yes, I will make sure she knows that. That's all I have tonight.
That brings us to appointments, right? Because there's no department reports or appointments. Board of Appeals, Ben Smith resignation. Make a motion to accept that, please.
Make a motion.
Second.
There we go. I got the first and a second. Roll call.
Council Albert,
Yes.
Council Larochelle,
Yes.
Councilor Ward,
Yes.
Councilor Lunt,
Yes.
Council Ganong,
Yes.
Council Kobe,
Yes.
Council Fellows.
Yes.
Order passed 7-0.
Next will be the water commissioner vacancy for Mr. Lemieux, who resigned. It's my understanding if we did this the last time, we took applications for the position and we appointed for that. I would advocate that we take applications. I think 2 weeks is probably rushing it in COVID. I would put them out there that we take action on this item as long as Dawn agrees being the liaison for the second meeting in February, and we appoint from the list of applications who we feel is the most qualified for the position. That's the protocol that we followed the last time associated with that. Is that Ken? If I remember correctly, Fern, who did we appoint with that? That was, trying to remember who the hell it was. We just did it. Anyways, neither here nor there.
It was Jim.
I thought so too.
We appointed him for Ken's position. That's right.
Oh, there you go, yeah.
Yeah, no, I had it backwards. That's right. I remember talking to Ken on that, but I think that we need to give him at least interested parties an extended period of time to be able to get in. Our marketing is limited at this point, but I would take action at that at the second meeting in February if you guys agree.
I just have a question. Have we had any applicants yet?
No,
No.
I haven't, because we haven't advertised anything yet.
Okay.
Can we use our board out front to put an advertisement out there?
Yes, we'll do that and we'll put it on our Facebook page and send it out as an alert.
Don, can you communicate that to the water commissioners? Does that put them at, it only puts them at a disadvantage for what? One meeting potentially for the February timeframe?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's just February, yeah.
Yeah, we would appoint at the second meeting in February to be able to get them back up to speed.
Okay.
And that is for a balance, what, through November 2021, term of the timeframe?
He,
No, the rest of his term, whatever that is.
2022, I believe, that's
Got
what,
it.
yeah.
Got it. It's in the agenda. I
So,
wasn't-
yeah, so the appointment will go through the end of his term.
Okay. All right, so there's no real action on that, and that's the process we did in the past, so at least it's informational. Next item, Council of Communications. Anybody got anything else that they need to air tonight?
I just want to say one thing about, I keep walking Graziano Square just about 2 or 3 times a week. And as the snow is receding, I'm not so sure, the jury's still out, but I'm not sure the surfacing, grinding is working perfectly. I thought it was, and now I see some evidence that it may not be. So I'm going to keep watching it really closely, see what happens.
Are you talking about the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay. So what I want to do is I want to get somebody out there to take pictures right now because we've had a very mild winter. We've
Yeah.
probably only had the sidewalk machine out there, once, twice at the most. And if it's not holding up, there's something wrong.
Well, there's it's very minor at this point. I'm kind of hoping we get more snow and salt, but where I saw it was the snow that was left on the sidewalk is no longer there, and it's right close to the road where it's beginning to show. So
Okay.
it's going to take a while.
On the old section, Don, or the new one that they just laid back down?
On the section, they didn't lay it down, the section they ground.
Yeah.
The repaired, yeah.
The new repair, okay.
Yeah, it looks pretty good, except it is beginning to show evidence, I think.
Okay.
All right.
The other thing that comes to mind is somebody reported to me, and I don't know if it's already been taken care of, something around LCS for harvesting for lumber that seems to be either in the walking path area. Did you have, I should have mentioned it while Mark or Randy was online, but I wasn't thinking in terms of that, but it was reported to me. If you could have somebody take a look at that.
Okay, down near the LCS.
My
Okay.
understanding, yes.
On the walking trail.
Something on the walking trail, yes.
Okay, I'll check into that.
Thank you.
I don't have anything for communication, but I do have a quick question for Brett or Diane. I know that we had talked last time about reaching out to the old post office site across from the Grazi Park. Anything happening with that?
Not yet.
So just no communicating. Did we reach out and then just haven't responded?
Have you reached out, Brett?
Yeah, I'm in touch with the real estate agent there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Just wanted to get an
Vern, did
update.
you have something? No, okay. I got nothing else for audience participation. I just looked at that. There's no executive session. I need the last motion. Cassie, that's you.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Yes.
Good night.
I still have warrants in dispatch, and now I'm going to have a poll permit from tonight's meeting that needs 4 signatures.
I'll be by tomorrow.
Thank
Good night, all.
you.
Same here.
All right. Good night, all.
Night.
Night.
Hey.